Susan Collins rather embarrassed herself with Justice Kavanaugh, when he assured her that Roe v. Wade was precedent law of the land and so forth. And she said she believed him. And then, of course, she got totally hoodwinked. And now she says she had a very good conversation with RFK Jr. And he's promised this and he's promised that. I mean, I'm not a Maine voter, but I don't know. It's kind of embarrassing when you keep.
She was reelected after the Kavanaugh thing.
She was reelected. She was reelected. But boy. It's pretty embarrassing, I think.
Yeah, I'd be surprised she gets. Look, I don't think Susan Collins. She is not doing the things it takes to get reelected.
What do you mean?
I assume she's not running.
Oh,
I just assume she's not running.
Huh.
I think I know she's said different, but she behaved the last time. She behaved as someone who realized she had to win over Democrats in order to win reelection. She's not doing that this time. At all. I mean, she's not done any symbolic attempt, and I think that's I think about I like to use the Rhode Island example on this. When I first started in politics, I was told, well, no Republicans can win in Rhode Island unless your last name is Chafee. The Chaffees always win. The Chaffees always win, and eventually Sheldon Whitehouse beat Lincoln Chafee. Right? It finally it happened when it was just sort of. They'd had enough type of thing, right? And, of course, after losing, Lincoln Chafee became a D and I. I think he's still trying to figure out what party he wants to now. But I think the same thing is going to happen to Susan Collins. I do. Where it's sort of like, well, who seems to be unpenetrable, finally, she just doesn't, that the Republican brand and she can't, and it was at the time, right, Lincoln Chafee just couldn't bridge that divide the way the Chafees had for years, and it finally sort of the chickens came home to roost. I think that's going to happen to her in Maine if she decides to run, which is why I assume all of these things she's doing don't help her. So I assume she doesn't run. I assume she doesn't want to be humiliated out of office by losing.
Can we talk about her 52 Republican Senate colleagues? There has been, with very few exceptions, as we just discussed, sort of blind allegiance on everything at the same time that senators from red states are working like dogs to try to get carve-outs from all of the cuts to their farmers, to research from NIH, that they're just voting for.
Welcome to the kleptocracy.
Exactly. Well, so when they don't get them,
or they might get them.
Let's assume. Well, if they do, they do. If they don't get them, do they turn or do they just meekly go away?
I don't know. I don't think they turn. I think it all depends on sort of their own political level of concern in their own home states. Kansas is a state I'm obsessed with because it's a state that has clearly been uncomfortable with the far-right movement of the Republican Party. They pushed back on it the first time when they went on in the state level with trying to, essentially move public school money to the privates. And that, boy, did Kansas voters hate that, right? They've really rebelled against that. Kansas farmers are the ones that benefit a lot right now from these AID contracts. And they're the ones with the rotting, the food that's rotting. Yeah. And you've seen Jerry Moran, and he's been somebody that's tried to push back a little bit there. And so I'm curious to see. I don't know if this Democratic Party is capable of sort of trying to sort of reach into some of these places, but they should. And I am curious about that because I think the opportunity is there because of of what's going on. That said, I think we are headed in a different place with Trump. And that's why I call it a kleptocracy, which is there's no ideological focus on all of the things he's doing. In some ways, what it is he's just simply concentrating all power to him and concentrating all decision-making to him, whether it's on foreign policy. Oh, it's a mighty nice Middle East you got there. Maybe we'll take over Gaza. And look, he may end up, that's one that may end up looking like, the accidental genius because suddenly Egypt and Saudi Arabia and Qatar and UAE spend the money to rebuild Gaza, because they fear that Trump's serious. Okay, so that might be a small victory for him on at least coercing the Sunni Arab world to step up here and do something. But the point is, everybody's got to come to him. I mean, look what Zelensky's going to have to do to beg Trump, not to give away the entire country to Russia. right? And what is he doing? You can have our minerals. Please do anything. Just don't make us, become a satellite of the Russians again. But again, it's just about concentrating power to him. And I think these carve-outs that are being asked for by these senators will be like, okay, what are you going to do for me? And if some of them can provide something for him, he'll give them carve-outs. But it all goes back to this is no agenda that's ideologically driven. This is simply an agenda to concentrate power to Donald Trump, pure and simple. And now, and Trump has chosen to share this power with Elon Musk for some reason.
Well, speaking of Elon Musk, there's a piece in the Washington Post, I think it was yesterday, about how DOGE is acting unconstitutionally. Not a surprise to some. How far does Musk go? I guess it's a variation on the same question. Before a Republican or two says he's essentially usurping all of our power, and at some point we have to sort of act like a grown-up.
Well, I'm curious if any Republican member of Congress cares about the Article 1 of the Constitution and the power of the purse. Yeah. We're finding out, right? We're going to find out how many of them care. But I want to share this one little anecdote. I teach a class on Thursday evenings here in D.C. With a whole bunch of, basically the next generation of people that want to work in Washington. And about half of them are interning on the Hill. And about half of them are answering phones for Democrats, and the other half are answering phones for Republican offices. It's my favorite thing to ask them. What are the calls like this week? What are you getting, right? What's the topic? Well, last Thursday night, they're like, oh, my God, it's all Musk. All I'm doing is taking calls on Musk. And it was Republican offices and Democratic offices. I said, is there anybody supporting Musk in these calls? And they said no. And, in fact, the complaints were not all from the left. You had people going, is he going to take my Social Security? Is my check going to come in on time? Like, they heard about this Treasury stuff. The fact is, I love it, right? The whole idea of rumor mongering that has helped the right, exploit the left. All of a sudden, these rumors are potentially, causing agita now on the right about Social Security and things like that. By the way, it tells me Democrats would be smart about reminding people that Elon Musk has access to your Social Security check, right? You want to scare a way to, they sit there and scare old people all the time with immigrants. Well, scare them with their Social Security check if you're going to play, fight fire with fire on that. But it does tell me that politically Musk is a huge problem. But don't forget one thing about Trump. The guy will let anybody who's richer than he is a lot more latitude than anybody else. He always allows rich people back in because he's obsessed with he thinks anybody's got more money than him is somebody that he should respect. And so this is why I don't think he's going to throw Musk away as fast as he would anybody else who was doing this.
Well, you spoke about the people calling into members of Congress, but we talked about that CBS poll the other day that talked about how a majority of people think 53%. What the president is doing is fine. Yep. It was up in the 60s that thought he was being tough and being vigorous and all this kind of stuff. And the idea of slashing the federal government, I suppose, until something that impacts the individual person makes it seem like not such a good idea. Lots of people that voted for Trump think that's swell, don't they?
Don't you remember during the healthcare fight with Obama, keep the government off my Medicare?
Yeah, that's right.
Off my Medicare. Right? Like, everybody hates government except for the part that helps them. Right? And look, I mean, here's the next wave of lawsuits that the irony to all this is I believe the federal government, what he's doing here, not only is not going to save the government money, but it's actually going to cost the government more money in how he's gone about breaking things in order to do this. Because there's going to be companies, small businesses, that have to file for bankruptcy in the next couple of weeks because they can't make payroll. They can't, because they have a government contract. Are you telling me that the United States government is no longer, like, if you have a contract with the United States government, that's not a guarantee anymore. That's not something that is like ironclad. And I think contracts are contracts. I think all of these small businesses are going to sue the government for breach of contract, and they're all going to win. And they're all going to get financial restitution plus interest. I promise you, in 3 years, it's going to take a while, but that this is what will be the legacy of Musk, is that the way they went about this. And the irony is he's got a compliant Congress right now. You could have literally done something, at least hanging your hat on the Constitution, pretending you give a darn about the Constitution. And you could have hung your hat on it, giving DOGE actual constitutional authority. They could have done it. Might have been easy. Guess what? Getting stuff passed in Congress is hard. It's supposed to be hard because there's 350 million people. You bring it along slowly. But it wouldn't have been that hard right now with his compliant Republican Party. But not doing it is now going to cost all of us taxpayers billions of dollars in his attempt to save billions of dollars. And I know that you can't get people to think about consequences down the road, right? We all are frustrated by that. But this is what's going to happen. Every one of these small businesses is going to sue the government for breach of contract, and they're going to win because the contract still matters in this country, at least. And if it doesn't, well, then we're all going to Costa Rica. Then stuff all your cash in mattresses and let's go to Costa Rica.
It's already stuffed.
Yeah.
We're talking to Chuck Todd. Let me pick up on cost to taxpayers somewhere down the road. How long is that road on the issue that he was going to fix on day one and bring prices down? Egg prices up 50% in a year. Gas prices up. Go down the list of critical consumer things. Right. I would hazard to say, while there are a lot of reasons Trump is president again, his promise to bring down prices, I would say, is at the top of the list. 66% in some poll a day or two ago said that Trump is not doing enough to bring prices down. How much of a leash does he have here, Chuck Todd?
Well, remember, Obama got a pretty long leash by blaming Bush for the economy for a while, right? And then there was a point where you couldn't. I think you have anywhere from 6 months to 18 months where the memory of the previous administration fades. I was thinking, imagine a President Harris right now with the egg situation. Do you think there'd be any other story being covered in the media other than the price of it? Now, part of it is, why are there other stories being covered? Kamala Harris wouldn't have taken a wrecking ball to the government and wouldn't have just surrendered Ukraine to Russia, right? Covering and tried to take over Gaza. So there are a lot of other stories that have sort of gotten in some ways, the fog of crazy that Trump has done has made it hard to just focus on this egg crisis here, right? But I'm half expecting Trump to say, who needs eggs anyway? Why do you even, the best way to save money on eggs is not to buy them.
That's right. Who needs them?
Let's make French toast great again, And in fact, no, we're going to call it American toast. We're going to have American toast for breakfast. Sorry. No more French toast. But come on. Although you need eggs for that, so I don't know.
You do.
Yeah, maybe there's an egg alternative you can come up with.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So here's something. Is this just another amalgamating power, amassing power, or he wants to, make himself seem like the next JFK? What is this thing with the taking over the board of the Kennedy Center? Yeah, I mean.
Before you answer, can we play? We have sound from the woman who was the president since 2014, Deborah Rutter. It's sort of an interesting line from her.
Yep.
She is stepping. Here's Rutter.
Like the democratic process, art is something we can never take for granted. Creativity must be cultivated and nurtured if we are to preserve it for future generations. By being here tonight, you are all making a clear statement as importance of human connection, and as President Kennedy would say, contributing to the human spirit.
This was not the last couple of days, she said, not too long ago.
And by the way, lots of presidents go back and forth. Biden get rid of some people on the board, put in people he wanted, replacing people Trump wanted. So that's not so weird. But to becoming to take over the president, the chairmanship of the board yourself, is kind of unusual.
I think this was David Rubenstein was not supportive of Trump's presidency, so this was his way of punishing him. The irony to getting rid of him is, who's paid for all of. I don't know when the last time you guys were in D.C., but the expansion of Kennedy Center has been unbelievable.
I have not.
They really have. It is become. They've added a couple of buildings. They have more places to do events than ever before. Really small theaters. They can do a lot more smaller programs, boutique ideas, things like that. Probably some ideas that Donald Trump doesn't like. But the point was, it was a way to not, the main theaters are still the main theaters, and they still can bring the big musicals, and they have the great place for the National Symphony Orchestra, all that stuff. It is, and you know who paid for it all? David Rubenstein. I mean, just about all of it. And he's it's just so funny. The guy who created not BlackRock, but it's the I'm drawing the blank where Cheney and a lot of other Carlyle Group. Sorry.
Oh yeah,
He's
Carlyle
sort
Group.
of the founding Carlyle Group. It's just sort of amusing that Carlyle Group, which was never associated with the left until the last 10 years. It wasn't really left; it was just anti-Trump, right? Just like a lot of mainstream business organizations until they have all capitulated over the last 6 months. But it is weird. I mean, to do that really actually undermines the ability of Kennedy senator to get other stuff done. But I think his obsession is twofold. One, he's always been obsessed with becoming the heir to the Kennedys.
Yeah.
Right? He loves, this is his, why Bobby Kennedy Jr. gets so much love. And I do think he really believes Kennedy is the reason why he won. The second thing is...
You do?
Robert, not...
Yeah, I know, but elaborate on that a little bit.
Oh, well, all you have to do is look at the polling of Kennedy. I think I brought this up to you before.
He polls well.
As controversial as we all think Kennedy is, he's the most popular cabinet pick. And it's not a close call. And he has, I mean...
It's not saying that much, is it?
It's a low bar. Yeah, it's a low bar. All right, fair enough. But it's not that he's just popular due to a low bar. He is, the Kennedy halo exists, coupled with he really had become a major influencer in the wellness world. And that is a kooky place, right? That is a place that isn't, I love to point out Naomi Wolf was sort of a spiritual advisor to Al Gore, who became a Trumper, and her gateway drug was Kennedy, right? There's a whole bunch of former left-wingers whose gateway drug was Kennedy to get to Trump. And so there is a little bit of that. But the second thing, when you make the case that they've rotted the culture, then you have to continue to do symbolic things to look like you're trying to change the culture. And I think this is a bit of symbolism for his cultural base. The cultural base thinks that, here in Washington, it's all Gomorrah, right? It is just, craziness here. We've got trans sex parties, key parties. Who the heck knows what they think happens here? And so I think he's got to do things that make it seem as if he's changing something that didn't exist. Right?
Yeah.
Like if you claim that and so I think some of that motivation is there. But this is who he is.
Well, but
right?
wait,
he loves to be in the middle of everything.
Well, that's true.
Especially in culture.
But don't you think it's even simpler than that? I'm not discounting the things you said. He wants the love and affection of all the big stars who can't stand him.
Yeah, he does.
And they're the ones that generally appear on that stage there or support
Caroline
that
Kennedy
stage.
said such horrible things about her cousin.
You know what this means?
What?
Kid Rock, Lee Greenwood.
Exactly.
The next Kennedy Center honors, we know who's going to get honored, right? It's going to be the folks who only support his politics on this. So it is a little bit of that, but I imagine if Kamala Harris took over the Kennedy Center board. Imagine if George Soros staffers had control of the Treasury payment system. I mean, I just am that part of it is just what I think everybody needs to. You do need to do this exercise. Imagine if.
I agree.
Right? Instead of it's Musk, it's Soros. Instead of it's Trump, it's Biden or Harris or Obama. My God, can you imagine if Obama decided to make himself the head of the Kennedy Center? It would have been a scandal. There would have been impeachment articles.
Well, the one major difference, of course, is the Republicans know how to fight against things like that, and the Democrats are still trying to figure out what the game plan is, don't you think?
Well, here's the problem Democrats have, and I sort of, when you run as the party of normal, when you run as the party that isn't going to, that you're the party of stability, when you try to exploit instability the way the right does, right? The right doesn't get punished for lying because they don't sit there and say they don't lie. Right? I think the problem the left has is voters, wait a minute, we're counting on you to be the normal. Don't act like them. right? Like this is, and I think this is why the party's so divided on how to respond to Trump right now. I think you have about half that say, hey, we've got to be the normal people. We've got to be the stable people. But there's a fine line between being the string quartet on the Titanic and playing while everything's collapsing around you, right? And Chicken Little, right? Like it's sort of, and they haven't yet found that equilibrium.
Well, they got to change the motto from when they go low, we go high, to when they go low, we go lower. That's the.
No, the new DNC chair said that.
Oh, he did?
He almost used that exact quote.
I didn't know that.
He said, "My job is to take the low road so that my candidates don't have to."
Oh,
that's a pretty good line.
It was an interesting. Yeah, it was again, I think it's something that'll blow back on him a little bit because there is this expectation that the Democrats are supposed to play by the rules, right? Democrats believe in rules, so when they don't play by the rules, they get punished. Republicans don't pretend they'll play by the rules. They're like, well, these rules are rigged. We don't like them, so we're not going to abide by them.
You know what, Chuck, we're out of time, but one of our texters missed a very important point, and I think he's got a point.
What is it?
Donald Trump will rename the Kennedy Center the Trump Center.
Of course. He probably will.
Well, he might. How about Trump Kennedy Center? He might at least keep the Kennedy name. He would keep the name. He's not. Look, he wants to do a museum of heroes.
That's right.
A statue park. He's serious about this. I have a feeling the first statues, we know which one they are.
Besides him? Who's the second one?
Let me ask you this. Right. Would you cut this deal? We'll put you on Mount Rushmore if you resign tomorrow.
I don't think we're allowed to answer that question, but I think you can guess. Hey, Chuck Todd, it's great to see you. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Enjoy the mug, my friend.
Thank you, Chuck Todd. We've been speaking with the great political analyst, Chuck Todd, host of the Chuck Toddcast, available wherever you get your podcast. Thank you again, Chuck Todd. After a quick break, we're opening up the phone and text lines. It's been 3 years since Russia invaded Ukraine with no justification. Once upon a time, we were really hugely supportive of Ukraine. We all ran around with our yellow and blue lapel pins and yellow and blue flags. Seems we're all ready to turn our backs now on democracy in Ukraine. What do you think? You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, while Notre Dame Cathedral was still smoldering, President Emmanuel Macron said he wanted it restored and reopened within 5 years. Well, mission accomplished. It's due in part to the collective achievement of thousands of craftspeople from all reaches of the globe, including Vermont-based woodworker Will Gusikoff. He joins us to talk about being part of the historic undertaking. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And MIT Sloan Executive Education, offering 2 to 3 day courses and executive certificates for professionals seeking cutting-edge business insights on innovation, cybersecurity, AI, and more. Info at executive.mit.edu. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked /1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the second consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Mark Regan, Jim Browdy, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow. Great live music with the Boston Lyric Opera, plus restaurateurs from Flower Bakery and Myers & Chang, Joanne Chang and Christopher Myers for Valentine's Day. Yesterday, Donald Trump phoned his buddy, murderous despot Vladimir Putin, to talk about the future of Ukraine as Russia's invasion of the former Soviet state enters its third year of war and destruction under the shadow of Russia's 2014 annexation of Crimea. Only after his call with Putin did Trump think, maybe I should also call the democratically elected leader of Ukraine, Zelensky, triggering long-held worries that Ukraine would be excluded from the very peace talks that determine its own future and security. So the lines are open this morning to ask about our collective memory. 3 years ago, as Marty said, we were all wearing Ukrainian flag pins, dedicating ourselves to democracy around the world, donating money and resources to those fighting to save their democracy from this onslaught. What does it say about us? And that us is everybody except Donald Trump. Do you still hold the same beliefs about Ukraine as you did when the war began? or have we all just moved on as a murderous dictator is essentially given an outcome by a United States president? Give us a call or text at 877-301-8970. Have we as a nation given up on supporting our friends and allies? And is the media part of the problem, not just the American people with a very short memory? Do you remember how I used to end, after the war in Ukraine started, how I used to end every single episode of Greater Boston?
Don't forget Ukraine.
Don't forget Ukraine.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I'm embarrassed. We have forgotten Ukraine for the most part. We mention it only when there's a news hook on a particular day. And so I have to say, the media has performed irresponsibly, I'd say. And I include us. But secondly, the American people have the shortest attention span of any people on earth. I hope people know
By the way, see the breaking news?
What?
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been confirmed by the Senate to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. Vote was 52-48. Mitch McConnell, Republican, the former majority leader and a polio survivor, was the only senator
Republican
who joined the Democrats to vote against Kennedy.
Our number is 877-301-8970. If you weren't paying attention yesterday, Trump had a 90-minute phone call with Putin. Said it was a great call, of course. He praised Putin for using a term that one of his mottos during Trump's own campaign, common sense. And then he says, and by the way, I'm going to call Zelensky next. And not only does he do that, but this is the greatest deal maker in the world. He has his Secretary of Defense, Hegseth, over there in Europe saying, oh, no, they're not getting into NATO. And also saying that it'd be naive to think that they're going to move back to boundaries before the invasion of Korea. Basically parroting Putin's line,
saying Russia
and giving up
exactly
any leverage
what they want.
exactly in this negotiation. So it's a total surrender, at least in our estimation, of Ukraine and its democracy to his buddy Vladimir Putin.
Well,
and I blame us, then the media and the American people in part.
You know, it was not long ago when we talked with the people from Frontline, the director of the movie about 20 Days in Mariupol, which showed
won Academy
the
Award.
Brutality with which the Russians moved in, taking civilians, walking them down hallways behind buildings and killing them. The Russians have taken children from Ukraine, separated them from their families, and they are in Russia. I mean, are all those children just going to stay stolen from their families because Vladimir Putin wants to re-educate them over there in Russian camps? I mean, it's really, and the Europeans are very upset, obviously, because as you said, and what we've read this morning, it's going to be Putin and Trump negotiating. Zelensky's going to I guess he's going to talk to J.D. Vance, the vice president.
I think that's happening today or something,
the one who thinks it was okay then when that DOGE guy said normalize Indian hate, even though his wife is an Indian and his children are Indian Americans. He was okay with that, J.D. Vance. And by the way, the Pope is after him, too.
I heard that. And, by the way, it's not just the evidence that Trump is surrendering Ukraine's interests to Vladimir Putin based on his description of the call. Yesterday, did you see this on TV last night? Russian media is praising the elevation of Tulsi Gabbard as the director of national intelligence, in part because she's got a good thing from her perspective, and Trump's, I'm sure, with Vladimir Putin. But again, the primary blame, Putin, obviously Trump, who's got the power, the primary blame goes there. We should be ashamed of ourselves as a people for totally moving on from this fight for democracy. And as I say, the media, I'm not suggesting like CNN should continue to have a ton of reporters there every single day, but we should have been talking about it much more than we are.
Well, look what we've done. I still can't get over what we've done to the people that helped the troops in Afghanistan.
I know.
Just left them there to possibly be killed or spend their lives in hiding, fearing retaliation for helping the American soldiers as translators and as guides, etc., when they were over there fighting that war.
An anonymous texter says, you're being ridiculous. So negotiating and ending the war is bad? Of course it is not, but it depends on how the war is ended, and it appears it's ending with Donald Trump giving Vladimir Putin whatever he wants. So we're not talking about an end. A just end would be a wonderful and good thing, but not this end. 877-301-8970.
You know, when after Tulsi Gabbard was sworn in yesterday, we learned this morning that there was a that Trump was asked in the Oval Office whether he viewed Ukraine, quote, as an equal member of the peace process. And Trump paused And then he just said, that's an interesting question. I think they have to make peace. I mean, it looks like it's going to be Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump deciding the fate of Ukraine.
I'm so glad you said that. It's huge. He can't even answer yes to, are they going to be an equal partner in the peace talks?
Well, I think that Putin has been very successful in flattering Donald Trump, and Donald Trump loves flattery, and his seduction has paid off.
Do you remember the infamous, we'll get to your calls in about 30 seconds.
Helsinki?
Helsinki?
Yes.
Where he says, when the issue was the intelligence forces, I think all 17 of the agencies, saying one thing, Putin another. What did Trump say at the thing? Why would he not be telling the truth here? And of course, the next day, he said he was misunderstood.
Yeah, that he believed the Russian intelligence, not the American intelligence. And that was after the Mueller report found that the Russians interfered with the 2016 election.
Let's take some calls.
Paul in New Hampshire. Hi.
Hello, Paul.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for taking my call. I'm a first-time caller, long-time listener.
We really appreciate both. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I just wanted to comment. I don't know that people have given up on Ukraine. I think it's less and less in the media, and I think you're spot on. And much of it is the media in general is reacting to this campaign of executive orders. We have nowhere to look, know what to do. And I can tell you firsthand, I have cousins in Italy, in Portugal, and in England, and they look at what's happening across the world in a very different light than what we do. They see us faltering as a democracy.
Yeah.
And with our faltering, their hopes are going down as well. And it would be a horrible, horrible win for autocracy in general if Russia fell. If Ukraine fell, or at least they didn't get an even shake in these peace talks. We can never forget that Russia invaded a sovereign nation, and that's really what's at risk here, because what's to stop them from doing that further?
You know, Paul, I'm so glad you called. We didn't do as good a job setting this up as you did. It is bigger. I mean, obviously, the Ukraine thing is the immediate thing. It is bigger than this. Does China watch this and say, well, I guess I can go into Taiwan.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to have to worry about the United States.
Russia can go into Poland.
I mean, Paul, you set the stage beautifully. Thank you for your call. Please call us again. 877-301-8970. This is another anonymous texter is singing my tune. Short attention span. Trump killed 300,000 Americans during COVID. And I think it's fair to say that there were many more deaths because of the response of Trump until he finally got with it and did the warp speed thing with the vaccines, which is probably the best thing he's ever done for the American people. 877-301-8890. We're talking about Trump's conversation with Vladimir Putin yesterday, which suggests, I think, to most observers, that Ukraine is going to be on the losing end of this transaction.
Sam from Midhaven says, help me understand when President Biden speaks with Putin, it's called diplomacy. When a Republican president does it, the media is outraged. Sam, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that they haven't spoken in years. It's
Biden stopped talking after,
yeah. So they were not. He was not speaking with Vladimir Putin. I think it was since 2022.
And by the way, it doesn't mean that there are not some connections. Obviously, when Mark Fogel got out the other day, it was an emissary of Trump's who met with Putin. But it takes on much greater significance. Is it Sam who just said that? When the President of the United States initiates a call to a literally a murderous dictator, which is exactly what he did. Jane in Concord, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, guys. I know I called way back before the talk became Gaza and Israel, when it was still about Ukraine and Russia. And it seemed like at that point, people can only focus on one war at a
You're
time
totally
somehow.
Right. Yep.
And Donald Trump says he wants to stop all the killing. Well, there's wars all over the place that we never hear about. When's the last time you heard him say something about Azerbaijan or Sudan or whatever?
Yeah.
So I think the situation's ridiculous about Ukraine. I think if they are going to give up the land to Russia, they should say, okay, here's the new border with Ukraine, and this is now NATO. But they're basically going to give everything. And I guess it does bother me. I was going to ask you what you think, if you agree that Ukraine was supplanted by the Gaza situation. And I have Jewish relatives and in-laws and non-Jewish relatives and in-laws, and I absolutely oppose Israel's government, and it's all intertwined with the U.S. So that situation where suddenly people were only talking about Gaza. They forgot all about Ukraine.
Well, that's a very good point.
I think it's totally correct.
We absolutely did switch from one thing to another very, very quickly, Jane.
But I think that's where we come in. I mean, I think the greater responsibility, which, as I've said this morning, I think, speaking just for me, but I think for Marjorie too, that we haven't met, is we should be able to do two things at the same time, so that the American people can or the people kind enough to listen to us, can focus on two or more things at the same time. We made the same move you're talking about, being critical of, move from Ukraine, which we talked about almost every day, to Gaza, which for months we talked about almost every day. So guilty as charged. Jane, that was an excellent call. Thank you for making. I'm laughing at Jane Joel in Connecticut says, I'm hoping that asteroid Kelly Beatty was talking about speeds up. Kelly Beatty from Sky and Telescope the other day was talking about some asteroid that might hit the Earth in 2032, right. I think.
Yeah. We have to keep an eye on it. He says he hopes it's going into the ocean. Poor whales. They won't like it much.
How do you think if you're Ukrainian?
Horrible. Horrible. How do you think you feel if you're an Afghani who helped Americans? Yeah. I mean, this is really...
there were people from Afghanistan, as Marty said, who helped us, who were ready to board planes as refugees. Yeah. And the deal was cut because they helped our people when they were there. And we made a promise to them, a promise that we are violating, which doesn't bode well for promises we'll make in the future in similar kinds of situations.
I mean, what really hurts if you are of a certain age, which I am, is that... I'm watching the great United States of America just lose all its moral authority. It's almost like what happened to the Catholic Church with all the sex abuse stuff. I mean, even though the Catholic Church done a lot of bad things, but I mean that was really bad, and this is really bad.
Well, like the USAID thing, I couldn't get out of my head the story. Can you briefly tell the story again?
Yeah,
you weren't listening yesterday.
I mean, we've read a million stories about USAID, and there is no doubt that there is overspending, and there's mistakes, and there's bloat in the government.
Which they should deal with.
Nobody. I mean, Bill Clinton, people may remember. I think he got rid of about 300,000 jobs back in the 90s in the federal government. But it was a surgical thing where you went in and looked at where the money, you didn't just go in and shut everything down. And what we did, for reasons I do not understand, is shut everything down immediately. A doctor would find out on Monday that she couldn't go in on Tuesday when she had people that had crucial medical appointments. And CNN did this reporting on this 9-year-old girl who was on oxygen. It didn't explain what caused her to be on oxygen medication. She couldn't breathe without oxygen, and her mother was there with her, and she was going to lose the oxygen. Obviously, it was going to run out. The electricity was going to run out, and this little girl was going to die. Now, I don't know why you can't say, okay, we don't like USAID, but we're going to wait a month to get people organized. We're not going to shut it off right now, and that's what the richest man on earth, Elon Musk, did to probably one of the poorest children on earth.
Well, how about Dr. Jat, a former COVID czar, as you call him, for Joe Biden, now at Brown School of Public Health, talking about the PEPFAR thing. There was about HIV/AIDS initiated by George W. Bush, a bipartisan thing that saved apparently millions of lives. It is also disappearing. We got to take a break.
It's also disappearing, and it cracks me up with all the people that are anti-abortion. What do you think happens to babies that are born with people with HIV, with AIDS? Well, they die horrible deaths without the correct medication. The United States of America would have been able to almost wipe it out, but not in these poor countries. Anyway, oh my God, why do I get in these subjects? They're so upsetting and depressing. I'm sorry. We are taking more of your calls and texts on what's going on with Russia and Ukraine. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Tourism plays a key role in the economy of Kyoto, Japan, but when tourists don't behave, that can interfere with daily life.
Recently in the media, Japanese media, they've been talking about meiwaku gaikokujin, or like nuisance foreigners, people who only come and make problems.
How tourism is changing Kyoto and more global news. That's next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Atlantic Design Center by Eldridge Lumber and Hardware, committed to helping you achieve your vision for a new kitchen or bathroom and guiding you from design to completion with showrooms in York and Portland, Maine. AtlanticDesignCTR.com. And Comcast Business, committed to providing connectivity for your business with network and cybersecurity solutions. Comcast Business, powering possibilities. Restrictions apply. To learn more, you can call or visit comcastbusiness.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie, and I have the hiccups, so if that happens, it happens. Streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. At the library tomorrow, no tickets or RSVP needed, Marjorie. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about Ukraine, after not having talked about Ukraine for months, sadly, our fault. Yesterday, President Trump, it appears, sold Ukraine down the river after his conversation with his buddy, Vladimir Putin. I'm guessing he'd call it another perfect call. Remember who the first perfect call was with? Zelensky.
Oh, that's
led
right.
to his
First
impeachment there,
yeah.
kind of thing there. But rather than talk about Donald Trump's behavior yesterday, which I don't think is surprising because he's enamored of Putin, we're talking more about whether we have dropped the ball, we the American people, by diverting our attention, whether it's to Gaza or to something else, and whether the media, including we, have failed by turning our attention away from this violent, murderous assault on democracy in Ukraine.
We have a text that says Ronald Reagan is rolling in his grave and Neville Chamberlain is back. And people may recall Neville Chamberlain was a great enabler of Hitler back in World War II. And oh my goodness, go ahead, Jim, because my text thing.
Okay, well, let's take a call. Ursula, you're in Westford and you're calling us, and we appreciate it. Hi.
Hi there.
Hi there.
Thanks for taking my call. Long-time listener, second-time caller that I got through. So my parents are from Poland, and though I was born here and raised here, I still have a lot of family over there. And we were actually over there this past summer, and there's a lot of Ukrainian refugees, as you can imagine, especially in like Krakow in southern Poland. And they've really are trying to make the best lives for themselves that they can, but you can see the weariness, right? But my family, the family that has been born and raised and lives still in Poland, they're terrified about what's going to happen, right? Because if Ukraine falls to Russia, what comes next? History has not been kind on that end of things, right? So it's I've not forgotten. It's still on my mind all the time, and this is why I was trying to not have him be reelected, because we knew that this was going to happen. He's always had that connection with Putin, and it's super frustrating, and I just don't even know what to do anymore.
By the way, I want to just add one thing, that the Polish people have been so welcoming
and gracious
to millions and millions of Ukrainians, which obviously...
Well, they understand, obviously, from World War II, what it's like to be taken over by Hitler, obviously. The Nazis were right in there at the beginning of the war.
Hey, Ursula,
1939, wasn't it?
Stay in touch with us. I'm very curious to think what your family thinks. But, Ursula, thanks. But I just want to say, Marjorie, in response, for those who think Ursula is being an alarmist, why wouldn't Putin? If he's getting an okay to do this, why wouldn't he keep moving and moving and moving? European Union is not powerful enough to stop him. NATO without us is not powerful enough to stop him.
Putin, the whole dynamic of his life is being upset about the crumbling of the Soviet Union,
exactly
which he really loved
totally
when they were much more powerful, and they were all over these different countries. He was in the KGB then, which says a lot about him, and he doesn't like, he's restoring it to its grand glory. Listen to this, Christine from Somerville. She's an American citizen, but she's of German origin, and she's extremely saddens me to see the nation that backed us as we took down the Berlin Wall itself. Remember, that was Ronald Reagan. The Berlin Wall, the evil empire, as he called it, crumbling before my eyes. Ukrainians are dying every day fighting for Western values, and we are betraying them. Friends and family for Germany are looking at me in horror and disbelief and ask me what is happening in the United States, and I have no answers.
Nor do we. Rich and Millis, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Thank you much for your call. Hi.
Oh boy, hi! It's hard to follow up those great calls you just had.
Have been
I want
great.
to say thank you for keeping this issue alive, because more than anything, it keeps me awake at night. For all the reasons you've been saying. I mean, we fought World War II to prevent this sort of hostile takeover of neighboring countries, and here it is happening again. And we're so busy with all the problems we've got going on in this country that we can't pay attention to what is going on in Ukraine, and it was lost in the shuffle when Gaza happened. It was infuriating. It was infuriating for me. Too much time, too much effort. All day was Gaza. And I don't know what we're going to do. I got an email from Country First, which is an organization that's formed by Adam Kinzinger, and they're looking for volunteers to go over to Ukraine. I'm pushing 70, so I certainly can't sling a gun, but I can help deliver water. And I said I would volunteer. They're looking more for people to, in the medical field, but they're looking for other help also. And there's really not much somebody my age can do. We've lost the election. Moscow came right out and said, we've won after the election. They knew what it meant. And it really is kind of a hopeless situation.
Well, I don't accept the hopeless if we all wake up and decide we can walk and chew gum at the same time. But that was another excellent call. And Adam Kinzinger, you mentioned, for those few who don't know, was one of the 2 Republicans on the January 6th committee. He and Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney lost her seat. He chose not to run because he knew that Trump was going to be campaigning so hard for his primary opponent. And as a result, he's a citizen, but being an unelected citizen, but doing wonderful things and continuing to stand up. Thanks so much for your call.
My 23-year-old son felt hanging the yellow and blue flag was not enough for Ukraine. He volunteered to join the International Legion to support the Ukrainian efforts to defend their homeland from this unjust land grab from a sovereign nation. We implored him to come home. Since the end of the Biden administration, he regrets leaving, but he is coming home tomorrow. So there's somebody who put his life on the line.
Well, how many normal people? We talked to people on the show, chefs, who left their restaurants, who just got on a plane and then a train and put themselves in harm's way in an attempt to feed people who are being starved out. I mean, there's a lot of courage and a lot of very wonderfully ordinary people in this country who care about other human beings. Victoria, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say,
Victoria.
there's a great documentary on Alexei Navalny. He just died in the
CNN thing?
Russian prison camp. Yes, and he, of course, was trying to run for president against Vladimir Putin, and we see how Putin dealt with him. But you look at somebody like that and think of the extraordinary courage, leaving behind a wife and his kids. But anyway, it's worth watching.
His daughter and his wife have not shied away.
They have not.
From his cause, I should say. Talk about courage in the family.
Victoria, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
Hi, Victoria. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm calling because I think we're missing the point. I don't think that it's about Ukraine at all for Trump. I think it's about legitimizing taking over land. He wants to take over Greenland. He's crazy. He wants to take over Panama. He's crazy. But not if it's okay for Putin to go into Ukraine and take over their land. Everybody keeps talking about what is China going to learn from this. They're going to learn that they can take Taiwan. Well, I think what is Trump going to learn from this? That he can legitimize land grabs.
Well, not only land grabs, but we haven't mentioned this. I thought this is where you're going. Mineral grabs, too. Whatever crumbs he's willing to throw in the direction of Zelensky and the Ukrainian people apparently is going to be a transactional thing in return for mineral, lithium or whatever it is that they have there that we badly need. So you make a wonderful point, Victoria, and I worry a lot about the future too. And thank you much for the call. One of our colleagues says, who uses lithium, by the way? Well, I actually use lithium in my Tesla, so that's the answer to the
car batteries.
Question.
Those are the rare minerals. Is one of them lithium? I don't know.
I think they have. I don't know what the percent. They have
minerals.
A huge store of the world's lithium, and he has broached the issue. So, in any case, one of the things we'll promise you is we've been remiss by not talking about Ukraine enough in recent.
More smart conversation about community issues is up ahead with Jim Braude and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio. Right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds from utility bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov. 100 years after the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, the community is coming to terms with its past, present, and future. Watch Tulsa, The Fire and the Forgotten, tonight at 9 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News, what matters to you.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The U.S. Senate's greenlighting Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to be the nation's next Secretary of Health and Human Services. Moments ago, lawmakers confirmed Kennedy. As NPR's Selena Simmons-Duffin reports, Senator Mitch McConnell was the only Republican to vote no.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was one of President Trump's most controversial cabinet nominations. He built his fortune and reputation sowing doubts about vaccines. Now he oversees federal vaccine policy as health secretary. Kennedy faced opposition from the political right because of his past support for abortion rights and from the left for his decades of espousing conspiracy theories about vaccines and HIV and Lyme disease and more. Public health experts warn that even the fact of Kennedy's confirmation could affect vaccine confidence across the country. Right now, a measles outbreak in West Texas is underway. There are 24 confirmed infections, all of them unvaccinated. Most are children. Selena Simmons-Duffin, NPR News, Washington.
A Senate committee has advanced Kash Patel's nomination for FBI director, and President Trump's nominee for Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, has just begun her confirmation process. President Trump plans to announce more tariffs this afternoon. NPR's Scott Horsley reports a move could complicate efforts to combat inflation.
President Trump wants to impose what he calls reciprocal tariffs, matching the import taxes that other countries charge on U.S. exports. Trump insists the move would give a boost to domestic manufacturers. It also has the potential to raise prices. Stock in Deere & Company has lost a little green after the farm equipment maker warned of slowing sales in North America. U.S. farmers get more than 20% of their income from exports, and they're often a high-profile target in any trade war. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
The Justice Department is suing the state of New York and top officials there in a dispute over immigration enforcement. NPR's Carrie Johnson reports it's the second case by the Trump administration against a Democratic-led jurisdiction.
Attorney General Pam Bondi says New York is prioritizing people in the country unlawfully over its own residents. New York Governor Kathy Hochul, Attorney General Tish James, and the head of the state's DMV are also named in the civil case. Bondi's targeting New York's green light law, which allows people in the country illegally to apply for a driver's license. Bondi says the state law is unconstitutional, and she says if other jurisdictions don't comply with federal law, the DOJ will take them to court too. New York Governor Hochul says the case is driven by publicity, and she won't back down. Carrie Johnson, NPR News, Washington.
U.S. stocks are trading higher this hour. The Dow is up 111 points at 44,482. From Washington, this is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The last in a week-long series of winter storms could be the longest and messiest yet across Massachusetts as snow develops on Saturday afternoon. According to the National Weather Service, we're about to get hit with a little bit of everything. Snow starting Saturday around 2 p.m., they say, then turning to sleet, and then turning to ice, then rain, then freezing slush, and then back to snow again heading into Sunday night. Greater Boston looking at between about 4 inches of snow and several inches across the interior sections of the state. Temperatures, they say, will be from the upper 30s down to the 20s, and wind gusts could be as high as 30 miles per hour. President's Day, Monday, and the beginning of next week, look to be cold and blustery with highs in the low 20s for the start of the February school vacation. An unauthorized third party claims to have obtained personal data from the town of Bourne following a security breach on January 11. According to the Cape Cod Times, the Bourne Police Department says its investigation is ongoing and the department cannot comment on the incident. However, town officials say that they will contact individuals whose personal information was in fact compromised. In sports, just in time for Valentine's Day, there are no games on tap tonight or tomorrow, or heading into next week for that matter. The Celtics and Bruins are both in the All-Star break. In the forecast, as we said, rain near 40 today, clear sky, 30s overnight, sunny, windy, low 30s for Valentine's Day tomorrow. 37 in Boston right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Subaru, who, along with its retailers, is partnering with Operation Warm to provide more than 130,000 children in need with brand new necessities like coats, shoes, and socks. Subaru, more than a car company.
He's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. I want to mention that we're going to be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow. Live music from the Boston Lyric Opera, plus the team behind Titanic, the Artifact exhibition, which I saw a couple of weeks ago.
I saw it last week.
Wasn't it great?
Incredible.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that tomorrow.
At the Castle.
At the Castle, that's right. Plus, Joanne Chang and Christopher Myers, you know them from both Flower Bakery and the great Myers and Chang restaurant. They're going to come in with pastries for a special Valentine's Day appearance. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. Here now via Zoom is former Suffolk County Sheriff, former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety, Andrea Cabral. What's your name again? Let me start this again. Is this live, this show?
It is.
Here she is. Andrea Cabral, I believe is her name. Hey, Andrea, how are you?
Hi, how are you both?
Obviously, I'm not so well, but thank you. Good to see you.
Okay, it was very painful for me, Andrea Cabral, that the first major win for the President of the United States, Donald Trump, came from a Massachusetts judge. But tell us about Judge O'Toole and his decisions about this federal deal for workers to work through September.
Okay, so I'll be really clear about the fact that I'm still trying to sort of figure all of this out with regard to this particular decision myself. So the Federal Office of Personnel Management, pursuant to a Trump directive, obviously, basically sent out letters to tens of thousands of federal workers saying, we're offering you a buyout. So you can either take this buyout or you may lose your job later on as we restructure. Like, your continued employment is not consistent with the goals of this administration. Now, a lot of these workers, I don't know if all of them are, but a lot of these workers are represented by unions.
Yep.
They're not at-will employees. They have contracts, they have union representation. A bunch of the unions, and there are probably 4 or 5 of them representing tens of thousands of these workers, filed lawsuits and filed a lawsuit, and it went before Judge O'Toole, federal judge George O'Toole, for a temporary injunction. Now, the standard for getting an injunction, especially one against the federal government, is incredibly high, admittedly. You have to show irreparable harm. You have to show a likelihood of success, ultimately, on the merits. Judge O'Toole, after taking the motion under advisement for a few days, ultimately ruled that the unions didn't have standing to bring the suit on behalf of the workers. And this is the part that I have to spend more time trying to figure out, because unions routinely file lawsuits on behalf of the people in the union who pay dues to get that very representation. And Judge O'Toole apparently said that standing requires the plaintiffs to be more than mere bystanders and instead requires a personal stake in the dispute. Now, Jim probably has a better understanding about this than I do, but I always believed, based on my own personal experience with unions, that there are certain rights that the individual members accord to the union representation in order to represent them in suits like this. So I'm finding sort of a disconnect here and not understanding why the unions themselves wouldn't have standing unless it was something that they failed to plead or pled that made him think they were merely complaining about the additional workload they would have if people came to the union looking for guidance that they couldn't provide. That is sort of mentioned. I'm not sure why this happened. Even understanding that, the issue of standing, where the standard is so high to get this kind of an injunction, would be very, very important. I was a little surprised that he didn't at least inquire about whether or not this buyout was in any way connected to the DOGE, which I think we're going to talk about in a few minutes.
we know, at least in terms of the VA, because I saw one of the emails, they were the fork in the road. It was a very nice little thing that he sent to Twitter people before he got rid of a bunch of them. So they got that same fork in the road email. And the thing I thought made it a big deal was that it wasn't from the agency. It was from the DOGE, Elon Musk people saying, we'll pay you through September, but the government is only funded through March. So it was obviously concerning. This isn't, are you supposed to trust these people? Why should you trust these people? Who are these people?
Especially since they are currently being led by the man who was notorious for not paying people after he promises to do so.
Yeah.
But beyond that, and from a legal perspective, Congress appropriates the money for this. And DOGE is not, I believe we're going to talk about shortly, is an unconstitutional, and I use the term very loosely, department that is basically making all of these decisions without any kind of proper authorization or oversight by Congress, which, with the Republican majority, has obviously abdicated all responsibility. I was surprised that there wasn't, at least given the unusual circumstances of this, a deeper inquiry, notwithstanding the issue, the important issue of standing in any kind of case like this.
Let me just say, I am of the belief, as a former union president, that the union should be able to be a stand-in for standing purposes. But there's another part of this decision. I don't want to get lost in the weeds, but really is troubling in terms of Judge O'Toole being in the real world on this. He said they have to exhaust their administrative remedies, meaning go to the appropriate federal administrative agencies that oversee this. Well, there's a problem with that, Judge O'Toole. The President of the United States has essentially destroyed those agencies.
Exactly.
The NLRB, National Labor Relations Board, he's fired people. A lot of these other federal agencies that are in charge of, that oversee the rights of workers in this country have been dismembered. So you're basically saying exhaust your administrative remedies with nothing because they virtually don't exist. So the problematic part of this is without an injunction, then that means this thing will go ahead, and if someday they win, they may get damages, but it doesn't. In the interim, a lot of lives are going to be made really, really miserable. We're talking to Andrea Cabral. This time, I actually knew her name.
As will the public that is served by all of these workers, whose absence is going to be felt.
Can we jump? We were going to do this later, but since you mentioned a couple times, there was a piece in the Washington Post yesterday by a guy who used to work for Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush, not radical leftists, that said unequivocally
the general counsel. Right?
He was the general counsel?
Under Ronald Reagan. Associate White House counsel under Ronald Reagan and general counsel under President George H.W. Bush.
And he wrote unequivocally that DOGE, meaning obviously the Musk enterprise, is unconstitutional. Could you translate it in English for us?
Well, it's blatantly unconstitutional. I mean, the entire our entire sort of democratic system rests on checks and balances. So most people know, at least I hope they do, that there are three branches of government: the executive branch, which is the office of the presidency; the legislative branch, which is Congress; and the judicial branch, which, is all of the federal judges up to and including SCOTUS. They are separate and co-equal branches of government. What separate and co-equal means is that there are going to be times when what they do overlaps, but they are designed, each is designed to keep the other in balance. So for the purposes of talking about the DOGE, Congress has oversight over all of the departments and agencies, and only Congress holds the purse strings. So a president can staff federal agencies that fall within the executive branch. A president can put forth a budget asking for the money that he or she thinks they need to keep these agencies running and to carry out policy initiatives. But ultimately, it is Congress that makes the final decision. Where the judiciary comes in, the judiciary steps in when one or more branches of government steps on the toes of another, and it is up to the judiciary to make the decision whether or not there's been an abuse of authority or an overreach by one branch of government into the purview of another. And what Charles Rawls is saying is the DOGE was not created by anybody other than Donald Trump. It was not created by Congress. It has no oversight. It's making these massive, seismic, destructive changes in the way the federal government does business, with virtually no authority other than Trump said this is what he wants and Elon Musk wants to be the one in charge.
Can I ask you a quick question about the constitutionality? On some issues, we know budget issues, there's mild disagreement with some of the Freedom Caucus members in the House. So it's hard, since they have very narrow margins, the Republicans do in the House and the Senate, almost all the Republicans have to buy in. If Donald Trump filed a bill to say, please create DOGE members of Congress, I would assume they'd create DOGE in about a day and a half. Who would vote against it in the Republican Party? So assuming you agree with that thesis, and I think it's pretty obvious, why hasn't he just done it? So there's no question about its constitutionality, and then Elon Musk can do whatever the hell he wants.
Because, for two reasons, I think, they're somewhat based on speculation.
Well, mine too.
Asking for permission it's not that kind of party for Donald Trump.
That's a good point.
Asking for permission isn't part of the plan.
That's a good point.
The plan is to create and consolidate all power within the executive and power through and bully your way into doing whatever it is that you want to do, and simply object and call judges out and put them at risk when they adhere to the Constitution. Second, I don't think the Republicans in Congress, they have no courage whatsoever. I mean, RFK was just confirmed as the head of HHS. I agree with you. They would create this agency if he asked them for it, but they don't want to be held to that. And they don't want to be held to that in the public. They have to answer to voters in their districts. So they don't mind that he's not asking to do it. But here's the thing. Every single one of them raised their right hand and swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution. That is not what they are doing by staying quiet as he bullies his way into the ultimate power of the executive only, and actually makes their jobs obsolete. But I completely agree with you that if you were to file a bill, they would pass it with no problem. He doesn't think he needs to. He doesn't want to have to. He wants to set the standard for not having to acknowledge that there are three separate and co-equal branches of government. And the Republicans in Congress are going to let him get away with it because it's not a vote they'll have to defend.
Pretty good point, I think. Good analysis.
So, Andrea Cabral, you go to the grocery store, you might fill up your cart, maybe it costs you $300 or $400 if you have a full cart. Imagine how much $489 million worth of food is. That is an enormous, I can't even conceive of that amount of food. But that's the amount of food assistance that the former Inspector General of USAID said was at risk of spoilage or diversion because of the Trump shutdown of USAID. So that Inspector General issued that report, and then the next day it got fired. There's already 8 other Inspector Generals fired by Trump. The irony, of course, is he's talking about getting rid of waste, fraud, and corruption of the government. He's firing the people that do
whose
get
job
rid of
is
waste, fraud, and corruption of the government. But in any case, they filed suit. They say that the removals were illegal, but they're in the same boat. It could be years before they get anywhere.
I think that's absolutely true. And I also think that they're absolutely right, that the reason that inspectors general were created, and they were created by both Democrats and Republicans, this is bipartisan oversight, is so that they could not be summarily fired by someone who doesn't want anybody looking underneath, his door to see what it is that he's doing. Here's the other thing that I really want people to pay attention to. All of this blatant illegality, usurpation of power, unconstitutional behavior is being met with groups of attorneys general, groups of inspector generals, individual plaintiffs, you name it, people are filing lawsuits. All of these, the federal judiciary is going to be burdened with hearing all of these cases against someone who is trying to effectuate a coup as we sit here and take over United States government, in addition to all of the other work that the federal government has to do. So these judges are going to now have to figure out how to do the regular work of the federal judiciary, which is considerable and really important, in addition to here, it's the same as all of the election lawsuits, all of the election denier lawsuits that clogged up the federal judiciary, that were baseless, that never should have been brought, where attorneys were actually disciplined for bringing this nonsense before the court. now the flip side is happening where people trying to preserve the Constitution and democracy are having to go against the actual executive branch and the office of the President of the United States to keep them from taking over federal government. And the inspectors general are one of dozens of groups that are trying to push back. But to your point, things wind their way through the
very slowly
the system very, very slowly.
You know what's scary too? I mean, Musk has called one of the judges evil and said he should be impeached. I forget which one it was, but these judges' names are already out there online.
Yes.
Their families' names. There's threats. It's scary. We asked Juliette Kayyem about this yesterday, whose husband is a judge. She didn't want to talk about it, but they're in very risky positions given the climate we're in.
Her husband, by the way, is the head of the First Circuit,
right,
which is going to get a lot of these cases on appeal fairly soon.
It's a nerve-wracking place to be.
That's why I said it's a coup. I mean, it is a takeover using fear, actual violence, the threat of violence, and now the power of the executive because, a bunch of people saw fit to return this guy, at least as far as we know, right now, back to the White House.
I want to stay on fear for a second. I've made this point about 11 days in a row, so I'm sorry that people are about to say, Jim, you've said that already. This distinction between what does Trump really mean and what is he actually doing, I don't buy into that because something he's not actually doing is mass deportation, but it's still scaring the hell out of people who are worried about mass deportation, even if it's not happening. And I'm not a religious person, as I think our listeners know, but I really admire the 27 religious organizations that came together to sue about the change in federal policy around sort of places that ICE and other similar officials, immigration officials, do not go. Churches, schools, hospitals, etc. So that's on one hand. I compliment them for their standing up for human beings who many people are not standing up for, particularly since this economy needs them, not to mention their humanity. I don't understand what their argument, though, is, Andrea Cabral, because there was never a law that said immigration authorities of the federal government can't go into a church or a school or a hospital. There was just a policy that it's inappropriate. Inappropriate may be the wrong choice of words. You know what I mean? Whatever it was, there was a policy saying don't go there, go other places. So without going into great legal detail, what's the argument that the administration, the Trump administration, can't do what they're not legally prohibited from doing, which is going into a church if they want to?
Well, I think what the religious groups are saying is that Trump has done away with the policy that said it was inappropriate to do this.
Right. Yes.
And now, our First Amendment right to religious worship and to welcome those who seek to worship with us and to be sort of historically fill our role as a sanctuary is going to be impinged upon.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really good argument.
Okay.
I mean, it's what's fascinating to me is that on the one hand, the Trump administration is doing everything they can to make sure that public dollars go for religious education and are trying very hard to establish Christianity as the single religion for this country, despite the fact that that's also unconstitutional. And these religious groups were saying, we are trying to, based on our understanding of our religion, treat others as we wish to be treated and go based on the edicts of our religion and keep our houses of worship as sanctuaries. They're now having to file suit because of the distinctly anti-religious bent of allowing immigration officials to raid churches.
I don't know if you're listening the other day. Of all the guests we have on regularly, the person who is probably the fairest journalist I've ever met is our Tuesday afternoon guest, CNN's John King.
Yeah.
And when John King said on our show 2 days ago, so did you hear about the vice president telling the Pope to drop dead? Which is the expression that John King used. There was Vance was taking on the Pope, and the Pope, he was
distorting Christianity. The Pope came out and said the Catholic bishops Jews and the Catholics have to get with the program. He's totally against
on migrants. You're talking about, yeah.
He's against mass deportation. He wants to let everybody into the country, which is probably not going to happen. But he went after Vance, who was trying to claim, quote St. Augustine about the expanding circles of love, and the Pope basically said he's full of you know what, and he's the big holier than thou. And I will say that Carolyn Levitt, the spokesperson for the president, at least isn't showing up every day with that huge cross around her neck. He's basically saying, she did wear it yesterday? Oh, my God,
so did Pam
it's back.
Bondi, by the way, when she said she was suing whatever city for being a sanctuary city.
I think it's hard to claim you're doing anything Christian when you're putting migrants in these hellholes that they're talking about, this prison down
Guantanamo.
Guantanamo and that other place on the southern border that's supposed to be just absolutely horrible, where people have committed suicide and stuff. But anyway, I was off.
Can I just say one last thing about this? We have been so critical of the Catholic Church through the years because of the sex abuse thing, which we should have been. On this issue, even Cardinal Law, by the way, I remember being at the State House when I was lobbyist there. Law did as eloquent a thing about migrants in this country and their humanity, and the Pope is doing the same thing.
We have an archbishop here in Boston. I'd like to see him on the 6 o'clock news.
Yeah, he hasn't
Well, that's why the saying is, when fascism comes to America, it'll be wrapped in the flag and carrying a cross.
Yeah.
That's exactly what is happening.
Well, you know what you realize now? That these crosses that all these women wear that gets me so incensed.
Here she goes.
It's like the American flag. The American flag has now become tragically associated with Donald Trump. And now these women wearing crosses while they espouse all these non-Christian policies are wearing the same cross. So it's almost like you can't wear a cross anymore because that's what you look like you're doing, supporting Donald Trump.
On that note. Hey, Andrea, it's very nice to see you.
Okay.
See you guys, too.
We got some more text today saying your kitchen looks great. Obviously.
Oh, thank you.
Thank your decorator, whoever the hell it is.
Next time, I promise, we'll do some.
It was me.
It was you?
Yes.
You're doing fine work out there.
We'll do some dog and cat talk next week or something, Andrew, to lighten the load a little bit.
Just a bit.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Good
you.
to see you, Andrea Cabral.
We've been speaking with former Suffolk County Sheriff and former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety, Andrea Cabral, who joins us every week. Okay, after a quick break, we are introducing a new segment. This is a brilliant brainchild of Jim Browdy over there.
Thank you very much.
How do you two know each other? Where we bring together two movers and shakers with a personal connection, and we ask them how they know each other. Very clever, Jim.
Thank you.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio, the debut of that next segment.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Direct Tire and Auto Service, offering a full range of services including brakes, shocks, diagnostics, and oil changes. Direct Tire and Auto Service, not just service, customer service. DirectTire.com. And the Simmons Leadership Conference, a one-day event filled with inspiration, skill building, and networking. Thursday, March 20th, in person in Boston and online. InclusiveLeadership.com. And the Skating Club of Boston, presenting the ISU World Figure Skating Championships with over 300 athletes competing at TD Garden March 25th through 30th for the title of World Champion. Tickets at isuworlds2025.com. And Samet's Blackstone Associates, providing brand-focused strategy, content, cross-media design, and fundraising support to help mission-driven organizations build and deepen relationships. More at sametz.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jim Browdy. She is Marjorie Egan. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News, back at the library tomorrow. We're starting a new segment today. We're calling How Do You Two Know Each Other? It's featuring partners, couples, siblings, all people who do, what'd you say, movers and shakers.
Movers
in
and
this
shakers,
community.
that's right. That's what they are.
Who are related or connected to each other in some way. And we're also explore about what that relationship has meant to the work they've done throughout their lives. Tomorrow, for example, Christopher Myers and Joanne Chang. She won the James Bill O'Brien as the new, well, not new anymore, relatively new head football coach at Boston College. Bill was previously the head coach at Penn State, the NFL's Houston Texans, and a New England Patriots offensive coordinator. They have another brother, John, the oldest brother, former state senator who now works in the energy industry. Bill, great to meet you, and Tom, great to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you both for coming in. We much appreciate it. So let's start with you, Tom. As Jim said, when you were 11, you worked for Mayor Marino, ran the BRA, and you worked for Mike Dukakis before that. But in reading about you before you came, was it really true that Menino was a little perturbed when you wound up on the cover of Boston Magazine?
I thought it was going to be easy questions.
As the star of Boston, then Tom didn't like it?
It was like the Musk thing the other day. The headline was, "Where is Tom O'Brien taking Boston?" Was that the end?
He was a great mayor. He really, honestly, he meant a lot to me. I never would have had that job if it was not for him. And I wasn't 11. I started to work for him in 1993 when I was 29 years old, which was really, it was a great time in my life to be able to do that. My wife Trish and I had just gotten married, and we were about to kind of begin forming our family. And it was really fun. I learned a lot from him. He was a great mayor. It was at the end, I learned a lot of lessons. I was young and probably headstrong.
Very young.
Yes, and headstrong about what I wanted to sort of accomplish. But life worked out great. And I ended up really having a wonderful relationship with him, even up until when he died. And
wait a second, he fired you?
No, it was, honestly, this is a small town, right? And
it is a very small town.
It's a very small town. And we got to do some great things together, too.
I know that.
We did a tremendous amount of the Millennium Project on Avery Street never would have happened without his leadership. The work that we did, to get a variety of different projects done, along the Orange Line was great. Just the work we did. We did a new supermarket in Grove Hall. There had not been a supermarket built in Boston in decades. We did a new supermarket, a Stop and Shop at Grove Hall together. So it was really. He was a wonderful person for me, really good person, and fortunately I had a nice relationship with him even up until when he died.
So Bill O'Brien, I'm from Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. Well,
I'm sorry about that.
Well, actually, you're not sorry about that. It was a great week.
It was a good week.
Was a huge Penn State fan. I didn't know you. I knew of you when you took over after the Paterno Sandusky thing. Sandusky, I think people remember. A serial child molester in jail. Why'd you do? That was a fairly courageous, potentially career-ending kind of thing. Why'd you agree to do that?
I get asked that question all the time.
And?
Look, I think I was at a point in my time in my career, and my wife Colleen, and I, talked a lot about it. I was the offensive coordinator at the Patriots. I had a great job. That was an awesome job, right? Working for Bill and coaching Tom Brady, and we had a great team.
He was the quarterback, Tom Brady, right?
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. We were all great coaches when we coached him. But
right.
I think I felt like it was time to make that next step to be a head coach, and it was a challenging situation. But I talked to several people, including Bill Belichick and several other people that said, it's a horrible thing, a terrible thing that's happened there. But this is a great job in the history of college football. So at the age that you're at, relative to this being your first head coaching job, you got to really think about it. So we did it, and it was a chance to make some decent money at that time for my family, and so we did it, and I never regretted that decision. That was a great experience for me. I loved.
And you were wildly successful too.
Can I just add, he's being way too, modest. He did a great job with that. He had to manage the football program, but he also had to manage the board of trustees, national media. At that time, the NCAA was in a different situation, and they basically turned on Penn State after he had taken the job, and he did an amazing job. He saved that football program.
You mentioned a minute ago Bill O'Brien, Belichick, who you obviously worked for a couple of times.
Yep.
You mentioned your wife a minute ago. Have you and your wife double dated with him lately, or no?
I'm not going down that road. Leave it alone. It was a business, very professional.
Just curious.
Relationship. No, but I will tell you this. I've said this several times relative to football. In my career, I owe a lot to Bill. Bill taught me a lot. He gave me a lot of responsibility at the Patriots, and I'm forever grateful for that.
Is he going to be? We're going to talk to you about BC in a second, but to have a guy who's arguably one of the at least two, maybe the greatest pro coach of all time, going back to college, really in his early 70s, is an unheard of kind of deal. What do you make of that?
I think it's great for college football. I think it's really great for the ACC. People give the ACC a lot of grief, but here's the best coach of all time in pro football coming to coach North Carolina in the ACC. We're going to have to battle against them, compete against them. It's going to raise the level of the conference relative to, coaching and recruiting and playing and all that. So I think it's great. I think it's a great thing. It's all about competition, and we love it. At BC, that's what we're all about. We're all about, competing at the highest level, trying to do the best we can. And, we always say, bring it on, bring it on.
We're talking to Bill and Tom O'Brien for the first episode of How Do You Two Know Each Other on their show.
So back to you, Tom. You've been a developer in Boston. You're involved over in Suffolk Downs. You've been involved all around the city. One of the crises now that we're talking about all the time is the lack of housing in Boston. And you talked about the difficulties of building things now. I don't know if these tariffs from China on aluminum and steel are going to make any difference. I would imagine that's not going to be a good thing.
In Canada.
But what do you think about? We're in desperate need of more housing. What do you think we should be doing?
I think, honestly, it's important to have a little bit of perspective, and maybe I bring that to this. When I started in 1993, at that time, there had not been much in the way of housing, almost any housing built in the city of Boston for decades, literally at that point. And honestly, Mayor Menino did a wonderful job of trying to lead us into a position where we could be more attractive as a place where people would live. And the first projects we worked on, the Millennium Project on Avery Street, all those those were brand new projects.
Yeah.
And at that time, remember, the mayor took the lead on getting rid of the then rent control ordinance that existed in the city for a long time, and that led to a lot of housing creation. And by the way, too, there were a lot of people who played a role in this. The making the city a safer city with a variety of different community members and the police force, all those things. But then we hit the recession in 2009, 2010, which fortunately was kind of short-lived. And that kind of stopped housing production. And then we started again because interest rates were low. And I think during that period of time when interest rates are low, people, would look at all of us and say, can you do more? Can you do more affordables? Can you do all those sorts of things? Now, I think we have to recognize that as we come to the end of that period of time, we're in a different situation. And other cities have looked at this situation and taken a different approach. Seattle, San Francisco recently, New York, they're back in the business of building housing. We have to get back in the business of building housing.
Why aren't
we? Well, costs are too high. I mean, it's, if you just simply look at it, it used to be that when you wanted to build a housing project, if you could underwrite that to a 5.5% return on cost until the end of, say, 22, you could build it. There was financing available for you. Today, you have to hit a 6.5% or 6.25% return on cost. Plus, interest rates on construction lending are higher. The cost of building is higher. Labor is higher. All those sorts of things.
A lot of people complain, excuse me, but that's in democratic cities that we make it too hard. That was one of the issues during the election, that why aren't democratic cities doing more for housing? Is there something to that?
There's something to that. I mean, I think because, again, the episode here, we're coming to the end of a period when projects were asked to do more. And that, in 2018, 2017, that was probably not the wrong policy, position. But today you have to look at it in a brand new lens, and we have to operate as a team. We've projects that could go, I think, that are sort of stuck. And what it requires is really on a project by project basis, people rolling up their sleeves, working in. Each project has a different set of circumstances that holds it back.
The other day, Shirley Leung was, she's with us every week, but she wrote a piece about where's the business community, and you neatly straddled the line in the Kraft Wu situation. Mayor Wu comes and spends an hour with us every month. She was talking about housing yesterday and her rent control proposal. You're not crazy about rent control. I used to be a rent control lawyer in the South Bronx when I was a kid, so we have different perspectives, but she supports a variation on rent control. The legislature rejected it. Josh Kraft has proposed an opt-in rent control. She referred to it as fake rent control. Yes, I'm sure they'll debate that out. Should that not be part of the mix in Boston, Tom O'Brien?
I think it's perfectly fine to have those conversations, but I think at the end of the day, the most important thing is to address the hurdles that prevent projects from getting started. So everything, the increased requirements on affordability, the increased requirements around the building code and what's required to get these buildings in the ground, the costs associated with, rent control. The plain fact is that these projects are typically financed by state and local pension funds. So the typical financing here comes from the Ohio State Teachers Fund, the California State Employees Fund. Those funds are looking for projects, but they won't come to places where the math doesn't make sense.
So, Bill O'Brien, football is a violent sport, whether it's pros or college or that sort of thing. And I say this to Marjorie all the time after a big game. I love the tender moments, and I want to play sound for you and that quarterback we mentioned. We're describing a really tender moment on the sideline between the two of you. This is in a documentary called Man in the Arena. The first voice you hear will be Bill's, and the second voice you hear will be that quarterback you mentioned a minute ago. Here it is.
And I'm like, look, you got to shut the up. That play's over. I said something like, no shit.
That is a heated conversation.
So he's like, I gotta shut up. You shut the up. No, Dad, that throw it. We had a nickname for Billy. He was called the Teapot.
Okay. Did they call him the Teapot?
They did call him the Teapot.
Yeah.
No, in your household when you were growing up?
No way. That's kind of a goofy name.
Yeah. No.
I mean, he definitely could get emotional. Yeah, we all are emotional.
No, but that was, everybody asked me about that, all the time, right?
So.
Dan Deerdorf was the guy who was announcing it, who was a famous announcer at the time and a great guy, and he, his commentary on it and all that. But what people don't remember about that is, I would say that lasted about 30 seconds to a minute, and then right after that, we were getting ready for overtime, because Rex Grossman was driving the Redskins at that time, now the Commanders, down the field to tie the game. And so we had to quickly adjust to say, like, hey, if we go to overtime. So those things happen. It's like two brothers in the NFL. You spend so much time together with the guys that you coach. You sometimes you get in a little argument, and then it stops, and you move on to the next thing that you have to move on to.
Okay, we're talking to Tom O'Brien and the Teapot here at
but I'll say
Public
this about
Radio.
the Teapot. He was the Teapot, and then that got flipped around on me. They flipped it on me.
So I won't call you Mr. Teapot then. I'll call you Bill O'Brien. So just one thing about, there was a lot of talk with the Super Bowl that a lot of Pats fans were not voting for the Chiefs because they didn't want to have any threatening, they wanted the Patriots to keep their headness in
Dynasty.
all these. What do you think?
I think it's going to be hard to ever duplicate or obviously pass what the Patriots did. The Patriots did it over a 20-year span, and they did it really twice, right? They won in 01, they won in 03 and 04. Then they didn't win again until whatever it was, 14, 16, 18. So they had two eras, and it spanned 20 years. I mean, that's very, very difficult to do in the NFL with the way the NFL is set up. The NFL is one of the best businesses in the world because of the way it's set up, right? If you're not very good, you draft higher, and if you're really good, you draft lower, and if you don't handle your salary cap deal the right way, then you can't sign the best player. So it's a league of parity, and I think that what the Patriots did will be hard to ever surpass.
We want to, in a minute, we're going to get to your relationship and what it's meant in your lives and doing your work and things you care deeply about. One last thing about the college game. One of the great things about BC, I know I'm talking to the converted, it's a school that actually values school.
Yeah.
In addition to, it's great if you have a great football team. Charlie Baker used to sit in that seat for 12 years, once a month, 4 years when he was running, and 8 years when he was governor. Obviously, everyone knows he's now head of the NCAA. I have to say, as a consumer of all this stuff, I understand that great college athletes maybe are being exploited by some of the big schools early on. But this names, image, and likeness thing really leaves a bad taste. When you hear this kid transfers from wherever it was, Georgia to Florida to Miami, and he's going to make $4 million next year.
Yeah.
What's that doing to the college game, Bill O'Brien?
No, it's a great. I tend to agree with you. It is the system that we exist in right now. Boston College will never be about that, right? Boston College will be about the combination.
He's in an Eagles sweatshirt. If you're not watching, by the way,
if this is
on YouTube,
TV,
by the way. Go ahead.
My Eagles
It is. We're streaming.
We're recruiting 24 hours a day.
But no, so BC will always be about the balance of being able to play really good football and get a world-renowned degree. And then our team does a lot in the community. We really participate in the community, and which is really cool about Boston College. There is NIL involved at Boston College, but not to that level.
Sure.
We have to have somebody or a group of people that are very familiar with the college game, basketball coaches, football coaches, retired athletic directors, and we have to have a commission. And we have to have this commission that can work with Congress to really put in place some regulations on what this is. Because right now, I agree with you, it's out of control. It's ridiculous that, this school can pay a guy, a 3-year contract, $12 million, where this school over here can't do it. And it's who has the most money. That's not really what college football is all about.
We're talking to Bill O'Brien, who is the head coach of the Boston College Eagles. his brother, Tom O'Brien, was CEO of HYM Investment Group. You know Tom, I knew your brother, John, when he was a state senator, and he's in the energy industry. I mean, is he the underachieving brother in this?
No.
He's
the star. Senator. He became a state senator in 1992. My wife and I were getting married. I was his campaign manager.
He ran his campaign.
Yeah, it was. But he's unbelievably accomplished.
Can I interrupt you one second? We have we never take calls in there. We have a call. Who is this? What is this about? Who's the caller, please?
God.
This is an elderly John O'Brien.
Are you related to these O'Briens or no?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I can't believe
related to them.
I can't believe you'll admit it.
Related
I
to
can't
them.
believe you'll admit it.
So, State Senator John O'Brien, I knew you when you were a little boy up on Beacon Hill, and a terrific state senator, I should say. Before we talk about the family, the O'Brien family, tell us what you're doing these days, John.
Sure. I work for actually, it's a Japanese energy company called JERA, J-E-R.
Oops.
Lost him.
Americas.
Oh, there he's back.
Okay.
He's back.
He dropped.
So, sorry, can you get me?
We got you now. Yep.
Yeah, so I work for JERA, which is a Japanese energy company. We, in fact, supply 30% of Japan's energy needs, and we have a business here in the Americas. We actually own the Canal Power Plant in Cape Cod, as an example.
Oh.
So we are basically, and we're working with Governor Healy in her office on energy transition issues, because the big challenge, and part of it's your question to Tom a minute ago about the high cost of housing construction, is how do you really decarbonize in an affordable way? And we have investments around the globe. So we are actively involved in trying to figure those things out. So
John, we're going to have you in, actually, to talk about that, because both of us care a lot about this. Can we talk about family for a second
We're
here?
not going to talk about John's time with the legislature?
What?
I just have one question.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
I just wonder, Jim has a saying that he repeats over and over and over again, that the legislature in Massachusetts takes a 5-month vacation.
Every other year.
Were they taking a 5-month vacation when you were there, John O'Brien?
No. Well, first of all, Marjorie Egan, I'm still in therapy because you wrote the revolving door article on me when I resigned.
I did?
She doesn't even remember, John.
We have long memories.
Yeah.
Long memories.
Oh,
What did it
my
say?
goodness. Wow.
No, it's fine. It's fine, Marjorie. I'm over it. It was 1998, and I'll be okay.
I'll have to go look that up. I remember.
No,
I can't imagine.
it's
I
fine.
criticized
No,
you.
Okay.
No, my therapist is really like, it's going to be fine.
But he's clearly gotten over it, which is fine. Can we talk? I mean, one of the reasons we wanted all three of you here is we know a little bit about your family. We know your father died last year, and we read a lot about what sounds like a wonderful man. John, starting with you, and then we'll go around the table. What has this O'Brien sibling thing meant to you? In your career, your life as an adult, that sort of thing?
Oh, it's absolutely huge. Very proud of the two people you're looking at right there. Can I tell one Mike Grable story?
Absolutely.
Of course.
This is a good story.
Bill kindly invited Tom and I up when the Houston Texans played at Green Bay. And, Bill was like, come to Lambeau. I mean, this could be once in a lifetime. So we went up to Green Bay, and Bill let us in for the coaches meeting the night before and the team meeting. And so, which was hilarious because it was like Romeo Crennel and all these other guys. And Tom and I are in the back, and I'm the worst athlete of the three, so I don't even know what they're talking about. Tom and Bill do. So we leave, and I guess Vrabel turned to Billy and goes, "What the hell happened to you? Those two look like JFK."
That's typical Mike Vrabel.
Oh, that's
it's a
not
true
nice.
story.
That is a pretty good story. But go ahead, John.
I would say that where there are age differences here, but it's really amazing what my two brothers have accomplished. You referenced my dad, and my mom has really severe dementia.
I know.
And is in a facility in Yarmouth. But the two of them really, education, always care about the community. My parents were very old school Democrats, and that was really important to them. So we have, hence our love of politics, and they love football. There are stories of my mother. She was a rabid fan. So football became very important to our family. But they taught us never to, don't think too highly of yourself. And I think that shows through in what my brothers have accomplished.
How about you, Bill? You want to add a little something to that?
Oh, I consider myself the lucky one because I'm the youngest that was able to look up to my two older brothers. I mean, I just think the world of my two older brothers, what they've accomplished, what they've taught me, from everything from, education to humility to intelligence. Like, there's so much. I consider myself the black sheep of the family. I'm the coach. These conversations you're having are way above me. An electric company in Japan and, rent-free house. I mean, I'm just a football coach, but I just thank God every day that I came from this family, that we had parents that were, just awesome, that drove us to be the best we could be and really emphasized education and being a good teammate.
You're all Brown kids, or you're not? Did you not end up at Brown? Yeah.
I would say I would have never been accepted to Brown without my family. They would have had to wedge me into Brown. Please God, accept this guy. But my brothers are awesome.
Oh, go ahead. Let's hear that story.
Ready, John.
He's filled with stories today.
Go ahead, John O'Brien.
This one I'll tell it myself, but so I'm the oldest, and so I apply, and Brown, it's midnight the night before it's due, and my mother's like, I don't even know why you're applying. You're never going to get in. So we get the application in, and we're selling our house in Atlanta because my dad had been transferred to Atlanta. By the way, Billy grew up for a while in Scituate, not Dorchester, but Tommy will get into that.
I was born in Dorchester for 5 minutes.
We can cover that, yeah.
So we're selling our house, and the admissions director at Brown, who was a year behind my parents, because my mom went to what was then Pembroke.
Yeah.
They left a message with the realtor, and my dad got home and he went, geez, that's really nice. They call when they're going to reject your kid. So I was in therapy until the Egan column anyway, because I had that.
Oh my God! I got to look this up immediately.
Okay, so you can square the circle there, Tom, about what this family siblings thing has meant for you in your
I would
adult
say,
life.
I would add a couple of quick things. First of all, both Bill and actually we call him Jack, by the way. So both Bill and Jack did, absolutely was the foundation for us was our mom and dad, who made sure that our faith was important to us, that being involved in the community was important to us, that being a good teammate, as Bill said, being a good person generally. I mean, it's actually, life seems pretty simple some days when you look at our mom and dad. You get up every day and try and be a good person and work hard. The one thing I would add is I think all three of us also married. I'm going to be strategically smart here, you guys, for 1 second. We all married really wonderful people. So all three of us have great spouses, great wives, and each of us has faced some difficulties in our lives, things that we've had to get over. And I'd say the example of our mom and dad, and the example they set for us in terms of getting over hard things through faith and community and love, and being married to wonderful spouses. In my case, my Tricia, has helped us get over hard times and make our way.
Let me just tell you, if the three of you are half as decent as you appear to be, this is a lucky time and a lucky place.
I'm going to start a confession right after the show.
Hey, John, I can't wait to see you in here, and we'll talk energy. It's great to reconnect. Yeah. Bill, great to meet you, and Tom, great to see you, too.
Great to see you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Really
This
great.
was great
Thanks,
fun.
Marjorie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, John.
Yep. Okay, we have been speaking with Bill and Tom O'Brien, and John Jack O'Brien called in as well. Tom is the managing partner and CEO of HYM Investment Group. Bill is the head football coach at Boston College, and John, the former state senator, as you said, is now COO of JERA Energy. Thank you again for coming in. This was really fun. After a quick break, two more things. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
We called John about a month ago.
Massachusetts has been a trailblazer in education, technology, civil rights, and gambling.
The Massachusetts lottery was very innovative.
Picking your own number was a completely different form of gambling.
I'm Ian Koss, host of Scratch and Win, a new podcast about the history of the most successful lottery in America. Listen to Scratch and Win wherever you get podcasts.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, local business leaders share their outlook on 2025 amid the uncertainty that's come with the Trump administration. The host of GBH's Scratch and Win podcast tells us how the scratch ticket became one of America's most successful lotteries. And the Panama Canal needs more water. One solution is a dam that would displace entire communities. All those stories starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're at the library tomorrow. We had to give up on 2 more things during Pledge. It is back. We may only get to 1 more thing based on time, but Marjorie, why don't you start us off?
Well, I'm always embarrassed when I switch from a dignified and distinguished conversation with 3 gentlemen that came from a lovely family to get back to my low road self.
Oh, feel free.
But I can't help myself. The latest updates, you may know that there's a 19-year-old class of Northeastern 28 who goes by the name of Big Balls. He's
Here we go again.
Yeah, he's one of the Elon Musk little minions that's ruining everybody's trust in the federal government, or at least a lot of people's trust in the federal government. He's already been at USAID, everything going on there. He's now with the State Department of Homeland Security, and we don't really know much about him, except that is his logo and that he's 19 years old. But we have a little sound from CNN last night when they were debating this. Paul Begala and another guy, this Republican guy. What?
Yeah, it's pretty good. Go ahead.
Was debating what's going on with Musk and all these people. Here it is.
Who the hell voted for Mr. Musk? Who the hell voted for, excuse the phrase, a guy who calls himself Big Balls, a 19-year-old kid going in there and trying to fire cancer researchers and scientists and teachers and agricultural specialists? It's appalling.
And you know what? One of the things that is seriously pretty scary about this, Big Balls, as we know him so well, was fired once in his career. It hasn't been that long. He's only 19, for leaking a data security firm's information to a competitor. And he's got all this sensitive information about everybody in the country, practically.
Why do you think, by the way, we don't have time for my second thing. I'll do it tomorrow. Yep. Just stay on yours for a second. Why do you think, and I have seen polling on this, Musk's popularity is down a bit, but not hugely. Right. Why are people not troubled by this? Because, as you've said, they haven't felt the personal impact.
Because I think a lot of people wanted them to blow up the bureaucracy and the deep state, and they think this is fine. But you say to yourself, if you're going to blow up democracy, think about this, moms and dads. If your daughter came home with a kid, said, "This is my boyfriend, Big Balls," that's his nickname. What would you say? Would you say, "I don't know, sweetheart. I don't know"? Or if you were going to hire
how
somebody.
About his parents? Like, what's your son doing? Which one? You mean Big Balls? Is that? Do his parents refer to him that way?
And you also think to yourself, yet you doth protest a little bit too much on this front. You know what I mean, Jim?
Yeah, maybe not as. I know what you mean. Okay, it was one more thing today. We'll do 2 more things tomorrow, we promise.
Okay, we are moving on. Right after the 1 o'clock news, we're going to talk with MIT economist Jon Gruber.
Great.
He's going to talk about the decimation of the consumer product, whatever it is.
Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, to you.
The one Elizabeth Warren started, and that was supposed to, of course, protect us consumers. I don't know if Big Balls is over there at that one yet. You're everywhere.
Drive was a success. Your support is so appreciated. Today's news is on the air because you helped us get it there, and we know we all need to stay informed more than ever. So thank you from all of us at GBH.
Support for GBH comes from you and the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds from medical bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have any unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov. And Comcast Business, committed to providing connectivity for your business with network and cybersecurity solutions. Comcast Business, powering possibilities. Restrictions apply. To learn more, you can call or visit comcastbusiness.com.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
GBH.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump hosts India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi today in Washington. NPR's Asma Khalid reports trade and immigration are expected to be on the agenda.
President Trump has had a warm relationship with India's leader, but he's also accused India of being a, quote, big abuser of trade. Lisa Curtis served in the first Trump administration working on issues relating to India.
Trump's priorities are seeing India's high tariffs lowered on U.S. goods. That's a number one priority for him.
Trump has pledged to impose reciprocal tariffs on countries that charge duties on U.S. imports. Other issues between the countries include immigration, technology, and defense. The U.S. relationship with India has seen strong bipartisan support in recent years, especially as a counter to China's influence in the region. Asma Khalid, NPR News.
Brooke Rollins will be the country's next Secretary of Agriculture. President Trump's candidate has been confirmed to oversee the department as the administration imposes higher tariffs that analysts say will affect U.S. businesses and consumers. Shares in the farm equipment maker Deere & Company are down more than 1.5% after it warned of slowing sales in North America. U.S. farmers get more than 20% of their income from exports, and they're often a high-profile target in any trade war. Elon Musk, President Trump's point man on the government cost-cutting entity known as DOGE, is comparing federal agencies to weeds.
There's roughly 450 federal agencies of one kind or another. That's more agencies. That's almost an average of 2 agencies per year since the formation of the United States. So, I mean, how many agencies do you really need to run a country? 99? Not 450, that's for sure.
Speaking by video to the annual World Government Summit in the United Arab Emirates, Musk says the U.S. needs to entirely delete many agencies. An intense storm known as an atmospheric river is bearing down on California today. It's bringing valuable rain, but also increases the risk of mudslides and floods. Here's NPR's Alejandra Barunda.
Atmospheric rivers are exactly what they sound like, giant ribbons of water vapor flowing through the sky like a river.
If you look at them from a satellite, they actually look a little bit like a river, where they're sort of long and narrow and they meander.
That's atmospheric scientist Christine Shields from the National Center for Atmospheric Research. She says atmospheric rivers are a normal part of California weather and can deliver a lot of valuable water to the region. But they often include short and intense bursts of heavy rainfall. That can lead to flooding. And in the burned areas around Los Angeles, potential debris flows and mudslides. That's why experts say it's important to keep close track of emergency alerts. Alejandra Barunda, NPR News.
From Washington, this is NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The Brookline Select Board has voted to hire auditors to take a look at school spending in town, and it looks like the school committee will go along with it. The Globe reports that the move comes after a series of revelations about spending decisions that some say have left out students who require special education services. Included is an assertion that millions of dollars in federal funding that was supposed to be for special education services have been spent on anything but those special ed services. And today, Thursday, February 13th, 2025, is National Self-Love Day. Oh, it's an annual celebration to appreciate and understand the importance of self-love, created in 2008 by Christine Arylo, a leadership and empowerment coach who says the date coincides with Valentine's Week, and it's celebrated so that people can be strong enough to love themselves by the time Valentine's Day rolls around tomorrow. She says Valentine's Day is the time when people become miserable about being single, but once we understand that power of self-love, we can move on with confidence that you're always loved for who you are. Doesn't it sound kind of like Saturday Night Live's Stuart Smalley? Doesn't it?
Daily Affirmation with Stuart Smalley.
I deserve good things. I am entitled to my share of happiness. I refuse to beat myself up. I am an attractive person. I am fun to be with.
If you can't be with the one you love, love the one you're with, even if it's yourself. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. Fisher is committed to helping clients stay on track to reach their financial goals and enjoy a comfortable retirement. FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are going to be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow. We're going to have live music from the Boston Lyric Opera. The team behind the Titanic, this great artifact exhibition, both Jim and I have seen. I thought it was spectacular.
It is incredible.
In honor of Valentine. Did you get your picture taken?
No.
You didn't?
You're supposed to get your picture taken?
Oh, my God. I have a picture of me in the bow of the Titanic.
No.
And on the grand staircase with my sister and my daughter.
Well, then obviously I didn't have a good time.
You missed it. I'll bring in my picture tomorrow and show you, Jim.
Oh, my God.
Anyway, Joanne Chang and Christopher Myers, and you know them. They're from the Great Flower Bakery and also Myers and Chang. I think you call it, is it Asian Fusion Restaurant? What do you call it?
I'd say that's a fair
Anyway, they're going to make a special Valentine's Day appearance. Hello.
And they're about to open the thing in Boston Common in April or something. We're going to talk about that
in the former
tomorrow,
toilet.
Too. Well, he doesn't like when I say it was a urinal. Actually, it wasn't a toilet, but we're not saying that anymore. Okay, so at the end, that's where you say hello again, Jim, by the way.
Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. At the end of last month, co-president Elon Musk made a big leap toward his long-shot goal of turning X into what they call an everything app, a service that could encompass a broad range of services, including the ability to transfer money, similar to Venmo or PayPal. But with mobile payments could come some additional federal oversight, in theory, by the Elizabeth Warren Champion Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Turns out, maybe not, because Musk now, as I'm sure you know, has the Bureau in his DOGE crosshairs. Here's Elizabeth Warren speaking yesterday at the headquarters of that operation.
Donald Trump and Elon Musk have told the financial cops at the CFPB to stand down. Now think about this. I want you to think about this for a minute. No matter how big the scam, no matter how bold the trap, they have said, just stand by and let the Wall Street boys take your money. Well, we are here to fight back. We want our financial cops back on the beat.
And here to explain what happens to you and us if those financial cops are not on the beat is Jonathan Gruber. John is the chair of MIT's Department of Economics, where he's also the Ford Professor of Economics, and was instrumental in creating both the Massachusetts healthcare reform and the Affordable Care Act. His latest book is Jump Starting America, How Breakthrough Science Can Revive Economic Growth and the American Dream. Hello there, Jon Gruber.
Hello.
Hey. Is it okay to ask why you're wearing a neck brace?
Yes, it is okay to ask why I'm wearing a neck brace. I'm wearing neck brace because I've got such whiplash from all the crazy stuff Trump's doing.
Oh, he hasn't used that line before. Oh my God! You are a sad soul.
Thanks to my daughter, the EMT, for setting that one up. Here's the deal. I think it's very important to go back to 2007. You know, the saying, "Those who forget history are doomed to repeat it." Let's go back to 2007. In 2007, things looked great if you needed money. Anyone could get a mortgage. You got credit card offers every day with what seemed like incredibly low rates. And then it all came crashing down. Basically, the overextension of credit in the U.S. exploded the economy and led to the biggest economic collapse since the Great Depression. The result was some reform legislation, in particular, the much-needed Dodd-Frank reforms to the financial sector.
As in Barney Frank, we should say, was the second half. Chris Dodd from Connecticut in the Senate, Barney Frank in the House.
Yep. And now much of the attention of that legislation went to new rules that were put in place for banks and investment firms. And those rules have been weakened over time, but they've still been incredibly successful. But one of the key accomplishments of the legislation was setting up the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB. And of course, as you know, the hero here is our own Elizabeth Warren, who'd been on this issue for decades, even before this time, championing oversight of consumer financial products. So let's talk about for a minute why it's important. Let's talk about credit cards. Folks in the U.S. love credit cards. There's $8.3 trillion of retail spending in the U.S. 5.2 trillion of it is paid for by credit cards.
That is incredible.
But folks are not so good about paying them off. We currently have $1.2 trillion in unpaid credit card balances at an average interest rate of 24%.
24%?
24%. Now, how the heck did this happen? Well, partly, it's not bad news. The whole idea of credit is that some people see a growing income path and they want to invest in their future, borrow ahead, and this allows them to do that. That's great. That's what credit's designed for. But partly it's for a lot of people who just get in a bad trap where they overextend themselves and can't get out. The most common example is people who make what's called the minimum monthly payment.
Yeah.
When you get your credit card bill, it says what you owe, this is your minimum monthly payment. And folks assume credit cards are like mortgages. In a mortgage, you get an amount you pay it off after 30 years, you're done. But credit cards aren't like mortgages. The minimum payment is the minimum you have to give them so they don't go after you. But your balance still grows. It's not the amount you have to pay off your debt. It's the amount you have to pay to just keep them off your back. But if you just make the minimum payment, your debt grows and grows and grows. And a lot of people don't realize that. And they get in huge holes of unpaid debt. Now, partly, this can reflect bad decision-making by individuals. We all know people have overextended themselves and made bad decisions. We can judge them all we want. But partly, it reflects pernicious activities by credit card companies. So let's think about a standard example. Let's talk about how credit card companies work before the CFPB. A standard example is you'd get a letter from a credit card company saying you can have your credit card at 0%, 5%, incredibly low rate. Okay? And you'd say, well, that's great. I've got this thing. It's a low rate. I get this minimum payment. I make it. I'm happy. What they didn't tell you is that rate was a teaser rate that would raise over time. Or they told you on page 73 that it was a teaser rate that would raise over time. And on top of that, there'd be late penalty fees if you didn't pay on time. So what you saw is people not understanding and getting in these terrible holes. And that led to this huge problem.
By the way, can I interrupt you and say, Marjorie, I hope will remember this. We were in the other radio station. We were talking about credit card rates one day on the air. And I think I was saying if any member of Congress sponsored a bill to cap credit card rates at 10%, they'd be the next president of the United States. And who called in without invitation?
Barney Frank.
The chair of the Financial Services Committee, Barney Frank. And then we talked about the political reality of with bank. Well, I don't know if he said those words. I don't want to put words in his mouth. I mean, the only reason we haven't seen that, John, historically, is because banks pretty much own Congress. Is that?
Well, I mean, this is actually interesting you raise that because my first interaction with Elizabeth Warren was actually well before she was a politician.
Yeah.
In the late 1990s, she and I wrote a set of dueling articles where she argued we should essentially forgive everybody who's got credit card debt, echoing, of course, her current advocacy of relieving student
loans.
debt.
Sure.
I argued, and her argument was it's all due to pernicious activities. I argued, well, it's not all due to pernicious activities. Some of it's due to people making bad decisions, and we should not reward all those bad decisions. And so we should not forgive all credit card debt. And we had that debate. But the key point is what we could both agree on is let's end the practices that get people into this problem. And that's what she did by setting up she didn't end them, but she went after them hard by setting up the CFPB. And this is, look, there's not a lot of examples in political life of one person making this kind of difference. And it's Elizabeth Warren. It's all her. Okay, now many people, Obama gets credit for supporting it. Lots of people made it happen. They've had incredible employees. But this is her baby, and she really made this happen. And it's been a huge success. So let's just throw out a couple of facts. They've saved consumers more than $16 billion in undisclosed credit card fees. I missed one thing. The CFPB was set up at the same time that there was a piece of legislation called the CARD Act that banned some of these worst practices. But banning them isn't the same as actually enforcing it. So the CFPB went in and enforced it. They've saved $16 billion in undisclosed credit card fees. Through enforcement actions against bad practices, they've reduced $7.7 billion in consumer debt and won $3.7 billion in judgments for consumers.
Wow.
And here's the key thing. Why did Elizabeth Warren and I disagree back then? And why did Barney Frank say you can't cap interest rates? Because there is legitimate role for credit in our society for those who use it appropriately. And you don't want to shut that down. When the banks charge 24%, partly that reflects the fact that these are incredibly risky loans and a lot of them don't get paid back. And so the question about CFPB and the CARD Act was, well, would we go too far? Would we, in trying to take on these practices, slow down appropriate access to credit in the U.S.? And the answer is it didn't. Credit growth continued rapidly, but in a safer and more informed environment.
And by the way, when you said they saved consumers, they have saved consumers so far a collective $16 billion. Is this in response to individual consumer complaints that they investigate, or is it unilateral oversight action that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau does as part of its mandate? I mean, how do they do what they do?
It's both individual complaints. People could literally complain to them, and it's also lawsuits again, overarching lawsuits
initiated by them.
Initiated by them.
I see. Okay.
That they bring against larger practice. So it's a combination of both, and typically interact. Individuals bring it to their attention, and then they'll go after the bad practices.
So the thing is, you mentioned a lot of figures, Jim, just asked you about the $16 billion in undisclosed credit card fees, and you talked about reducing bad practices by $7.7 billion and all these billions of dollars and stuff. But what does this mean? Does this mean, like, if you get into a mess with your credit card, you call them up and you say, "Can you help me?" Or I mean, what is the interaction?
No, it's about the practice rather than the end.
Go ahead. I mean, I presume many people call them in a mess with their credit card.
Yeah.
And I don't know how they triage those calls and decide which to investigate and not. But their goal is not. They are not an agency which is saying, well, that's a shame that your mom got sick, can't take on credit card debt, although they may be sympathetic to that. Their goal is to say, were there bad practices involved?
Okay.
Was there non-disclosure of the type that should have been? So let me give a more recent example, Margie, why they're still relevant. This isn't just a 2010 issue. Okay, under the Card Act, passed in 2009, banks should only charge late fees to the amount necessary to cover their processing costs. So once again, if you pay a bill late, that does cost your bank something. We should not be opposed to a bank charging you a late fee. The question is that late fee related to what it actually cost them, or is it a chance to screw the consumer? And they passed the law on the Card Act and said late fees should not be more than $35. Okay, now this already sounds like a lot, but it gets worse than that because banks had raised the fees, and they were now up to $41. And there were more than $14 billion in late fees paid in 2022. The CFPB did a study and showed that the processing costs for late fees were about $8. And they actually put in a regulation that said that late fees had to be capped at $8. This will save $10 billion a year. This was last year. Okay, $10 billion a year. And this is last year. To be clear, the CFPB to run the entire organization costs about $880 million a year. That's a million with an M, not billion with a B. Okay, so we are not increasing government efficiency by saving $880 million on an agency that just last year passed a law that's going to save consumers, $10 billion a year. That is exactly a perfect example of why I have whiplash of what they're doing with this scattershot approach to just saying, well, we're just going to shut this down. You know, obviously it goes beyond CFPB. You know, you look at $500 million of food that is rotted because USAID shut down suddenly. $500 billion of food around the world that couldn't get processed and rotted because USAID shut down suddenly. We're talking about something, look, as we've talked about before, and Ro Khanna had a great editorial about this in the New York Times today, the Democrats need to get on board the efficiency boat, okay? Government is bloated and inefficient, okay? But what the Democrats can own as a party is doing it the right way, not this scattershot way that's going to end up costing us billions.
Can I ask you about motivation on a couple of fronts? And some of these questions are so naive, I'm almost embarrassed.
Well, I have some naive ones, too.
There's some members of Congress, Republicans, who want to repeal the regulation you talked about that brought down late fees for ordinary people, their constituents in every single state in the country, red, blue, purple, whatever. There is no reason for that except kowtowing to the banks. Is that?
And money from the banks.
Once again, let's be clear. Remember, I'm an economist. You know, remember Harry Truman famously said, get me a one-handed economist, because I'm sick of hearing them say on the other hand. Look, let's be very clear. This is why Elizabeth Warren and I disagreed in the late 1990s. Providing credit is a valuable service, and we don't want to make it so unprofitable that it's not done. Americans on the whole benefit from access to credit. Okay? That said, if you do a careful study like CFPB did, and show that these processing fees should be $8, not $35, then literally, if you get rid of that, you're just literally doing a handout to the banks. And there's just no reason. Look, and once again, let's remember, where's all this money from government efficiency going to go? Not to paying off the growing debt the U.S. has, but to subsidizing an additional corporate tax cut. That's why they're doing all this. Okay.
That's what Ed Markey told us the other day too. Can I ask you want to do a naive one, or
yeah? So
we'll
I
go
just
back
want to
and
get
forth?
this straight because I am really ignorant and uninformed on this one. So basically, this Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, Elizabeth Warren's baby, is a watchdog on these big banks. We all talked about how the big banks being too big to fail back in 2008 and 2007, so we all had to bail out the big banks back then. But that's what this is. This is an agency that can do these kind of investigations on behalf of ripped off consumers, right?
Once again, they're doing it on the side of consumer credit. There's other investigations into other kinds of financial malfeasance.
Okay.
But it's on behalf of consumers.
Okay. And so this obviously. So you want to ask your motivation question? Because
no, I'm going to get to motivation in a minute. Can I ask my second one, or you want to go back?
Go ahead.
I have two more naive questions. Here's the next one. Well, I don't know if this is naive or not. I understand credit is a good thing, particularly for people who have the likely ability to pay it off rather than get buried by it. Why shouldn't there be a cap? A congressionally, assuming it could happen, and which probably can't. Why shouldn't there be a ceiling on credit card interest rates that allow the banks, financial services institutions to make money, because that's what they need to do to pay their employees and stockholders, but isn't so excessive that it strangles borrowers and unnecessarily enriches the people who own their company?
Look, Jim, it's a great question, and it obviously comes back to my favorite topic, healthcare, because it's the same thing about drug prices. And basically, the answer is it comes back to how good is the government's information. If the government knows with certainty what interest rate the bank can charge and make money, then they should do that, in my view. But if the government doesn't know, remember, this is a competitive market in the sense there are many places offering you credit cards. It's not a perfectly competitive market. There aren't that many places offering you credit cards, but it's a somewhat competitive market. So there is some pressure keeping these rates down. If under that pressure, banks feel they really have to ask for 24%, I would want a lot of evidence before I'd come in and say we can do 10%. And Congress is not a very evidence-based operation.
Yeah, but John, that's what utility companies do every single year in every single state when they go before whatever the equivalent. Go ahead.
Absolutely. And we have a lot of evidence on the underlying cost structure of utilities that lets us figure that. And we have decades of experience of regulating those utilities. I'm not saying we shouldn't, Jim. I'm just saying the reason it's not obvious is because you'd want to make sure that you're not doing so in a way shut off credit. The way I would proceed if I were king is I'd first do the study. I would put in something a little bit higher than that, and I'd study what happens. Mm-hmm. Let's say the worst thing that happens is all of a sudden credit slows down a bit. Well, then you raise the cap. Basically, it seems like I agree with you. We can take action, but it's hard.
But if you remember back to when Jimmy Carter was president, mortgage interest rates on houses were like 15, 16%.
Yep.
I mean, it seems that's when the credit card rates also went up. The mortgage rates eventually came down, obviously, and the credit card rates didn't. I just thought it was a scam from back in the 70s and 80s.
Look, Marjorie, I don't know the right answer. I'm not an expert on this. Once again, you do have to remember, it can't be that big a scam because there are multiple credit card issuers, and to the extent consumers pay attention, why doesn't one? If really get away with 10, some would come in at 18, right? Yeah. I mean, some would come in and say, look, and they'd put that in advertising. I'm 25% less than anyone else, and they still make money. The fact they're not says that I'm not as confident as, say, Jim is, that 10% is the right cap.
Well, I don't know what the number. Whatever the number is, yeah.
I don't know the right answer, but it's definitely worth investigating. And I think in the meantime, you need watchdogs to at least take care of our worst practice.
Okay, I think you should do that investigation, by the way. That's next. So last thing from me is a number of editorialists in the last handful of days since, and we should have mentioned, I can't believe we didn't mention this at the beginning. This is my fault. The guy who ran Project 2025, and in Project 2025, it said shut down the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Of course, Trump never read 2025, doesn't know anything about it. Not only appoints the guy head of Office of Management and Budget, he makes him the interim head of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which he said should be abolished in Project 2025. Last Sunday, he sent out a memo saying, stop everything, meaning all of you employees, stop everything, and they started laying off people. So I should have made clear that they're in the midst of dissembling this. And that's my final question. A lot of editorialists are suggesting one of the motivations for Elon Musk is not just to please his fellow president by shutting down as much as he possibly can of the federal government, but now that he wants to get into the financial services industry, less oversight is a good thing for his future business. Do you subscribe to that or no?
I think it's certainly consistent. I'm not subscribed per se for Musk, but it's certainly why the reason that people like Russell Vogt, who is a name not known, but may soon become
the head of Project 2025,
the most dangerous person in America. The reason that people like that in general want that is that they have a view that any regulation is bad regulation. Mm-hmm. And their view is all that matters is letting companies be as profitable as possible, and any regulation is bad regulation. And look, once again, there is bad regulation out there. I mean, that, once again, I do urge people to read Rose Connor's editorial today. I mean, that's from the co-chair of Bernie Sanders' campaign, okay, writing that
who's also a congressman, by the way, but go ahead,
that we need to really be rethinking how we do regulation in the U.S., and we do.
Okay.
But they're not rethinking it. They're just cutting it, and that's not the right approach.
Okay, we only have half a minute left, but really quickly, without this Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, I don't mean to cast aspersions on bankers, but if there's no one watching over them, couldn't they kind of get together and decide we're all going to have a 15%?
Yeah, charge $40 late fees.
Yeah, exactly, and just get away with it. They could.
Absolutely. Once again, there is... Basically, we're in a world where there is some competitive pressure. If they try to raise it to $200, it won't work. The question is, how do they get up to $41? Clearly, competition isn't working as well as it needs to in an unregulated economy.
John, now that you've raised the bar and you have a prop to begin every segment, please talk to your daughter about a prop for our next appearance, because you can never go back, John.
Yeah. I like the.
What if we hadn't asked? What fools we
weren't sure. We thought maybe you'd been run over yesterday.
I was counting on you guys being nice enough to ask.
Well, we were. John, great to see you. That was excellent. Thanks so much.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
It. Be well.
Oh
Jon
boy,
Gruber.
I tell you. Grim.
Well, this is another example. We talk about when people feel real impact.
Yeah.
Right now, it's an abstract notion that John's trying to make real, but people haven't felt the impact of what they're doing at the CFPB.
Okay, we were speaking with Jon Gruber. He's Ford Professor of Economics and Chair of MIT's Department of Economics, instrumental in creating both the Massachusetts Healthcare Reform and the Affordable Care Act. After a quick break, after missing this for several days now, Jim, or several weeks, I think, we're back with another round of Am I the A-Hole? This week, meddling mothers-in-law and you're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, local business leaders share their outlook on 2025 amid the uncertainty that's come with the Trump administration. The host of GBH's Scratch and Win podcast tells us how the scratch ticket became one of America's most successful lotteries. And the Panama Canal needs more water. One solution is a dam that would displace entire communities. All those stories starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Atlantic Design Center by Eldridge Lumber and Hardware, committed to helping you achieve your vision for a new kitchen or bathroom and guiding you from design to completion with showrooms in York and Portland, Maine. AtlanticDesignCTR.com. And the Skating Club of Boston, presenting the ISU World Figure Skating Championships with over 300 athletes competing at TD Garden March 25th through 30th for the title of World Champion. Tickets at ISUWorlds2025.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow for Live Music Friday with players from the Boston Lyric Opera, plus the team behind Titanic, the Artifact exhibition. It's at the Saunders Castle in downtown Boston. And two of the great people in Boston, Joanne Chang and Christopher Myers, who were both married and behind Flower Bakery and Myers and Chang. They make a special Valentine's Day appearance.
You know, I just want to tell you really quickly, we're getting a bunch of text messages from people who contacted the CFPB.
Yeah.
So, and this is one about an Amex gift card. They had no way to get it to the person. The card was not accepted. They filed a complaint, and they got a check for $700 gift card within 2 weeks. And somebody else points out that it should also be noted if you missed a credit card payment, they could jack up your interest rate to exorbitant levels. So a lot of people have had interaction with this agency and said they're upset about it being gone.
Well, here's somebody who hasn't had an interaction, just anonymous. Just got a Capital One offer yesterday, and the interest rate was 29%. Vinny on the corner offers better terms, is what that person says. Okay, so it's time for MI the A. Well, obviously, they're the a-holes. The only reason Marjorie never takes a vacation day on Thursday is because of this. Today's prompt involves a woman on Reddit who is at her wit's end, threatening to leave her live-in boyfriend over the behavior of his mother, so sort of her mother-in-law, even though they're not married. Okay, apparently this meddling mother has been sneaking into their apartment when nobody's home and attempting to be helpful by cleaning up and
She's not attempting to be helpful.
By cleaning up and consolidating, I'm with you, everything in the refrigerator. The last straw, she combined all the different salsas into one jar. There was spicy. This woman, the young woman, works at a restaurant. She'd bring home spicy for her boyfriend and mild for herself.
Right.
She could only eat mild when the mother-in-law combined them. Do you understand that?
I do.
There was a disaster for her. So here's the question. Is the girlfriend an a-hole for threatening to move out over the salsa issue? And obviously an interfering mother-in-law, or is the boyfriend an a-hole for not standing up to his salsa combining mother? And if you want to describe some good mother-in-law stories you have too, you can call us at 877-301-8970. So it is the boyfriend, I guess, and his mother for doing it and defending the combination, or is it the girlfriend for overreacting, some might argue, by threatening to move out over a salsa combination?
Now, in mother-in-law's defense, if you want to defend her at all, it is her house. It's her vacation house. And the boyfriend, the girlfriend, and two of their roommates are renting it from her. But they are renting it from her, so they have the tenants. What is she doing coming in there, uninvited?
Do you know how the girlfriend found out about it?
She
put up a
camera.
security camera.
Yeah,
exactly.
Because she thought that the boyfriend was not telling her the truth about this, and she was stunned to see mom's mother-in-law sneaking in, looking through the fridge, pulling out all sorts of items, going into a cabinet to get a bigger container and mixing the salsa together. So I think
so. You don't answer the question.
There's two
Who's
a-holes
the a-hole?
here.
Who are they?
Well, the mother
and the boyfriend.
And the boyfriend. Yeah,
wow.
That's what I would say. What would you say, Jim?
I'm going to think about it for a little bit. I usually jump to conclusions in this part of our show.
Yeah.
But I want to consider the issue. 877-301-8970.
Yeah.
Marjorie thinks the combo of the boyfriend and his mother, the boyfriend for defending his mother, the mother or the mother-in-law sort of the girlfriend for combining the salsa in the middle of whenever they're not there.
Whenever they're not there.
By the way, if she came in and combined the salsa while they were there, it might be a different story, but she is surreptitiously doing salsa combining in their house. Are they the a-holes, or is it the daughter for complaining? Now, in all fairness, salsa is not the single most important thing, and she does get it for free at the restaurant she works at. So it's not the end of the world.
Your mother-in-law coming to the house under cover of darkness, basically, or sneaking in there on the weekends. I mean,
it's not like she's sneaking in and having sex with her son.
No,
she's combining this.
Jim,
No, but I'm
she's
saying
not.
It's not like a felony that she's committing. She's combining the salsa to make more room in the refrigerator.
Okay, here's some of the text already.
What's that?
Run, girl, run. Boyfriend doesn't have the guts to support you. Mother is the a-hole, and so is the boyfriend. James says, Mom has boundary issues. Son is the enabler if he doesn't stand up to Mom. Mom and her son are at fault.
Wow.
And so mother-in-laws have to be careful. You're a father-in-law. I'm a mother-in-law. You want to not mess into.
I am a father. Yeah. Forgot about that.
Jim forgot about that.
I forgot. I haven't been called that by you before.
Father-in-law.
I am.
I'm a mother-in-law. You don't want to mess in their lives unless you're asked to mess in their lives, do you? It's lovely for her to bring over something, if she wanted to bring over some salsa herself, but you call up or you text and can I come over with the salsa?
I would never admit if you
What'd you
hadn't
do,
said
Jim?
this. The daughter,
Besides forgetting
my
your
daughter and her
father-in-law?
husband, who live in near Albany
Yep.
in New York, I did drive out in the middle of the night and took some eggs. Actually, because I thought they were eating too much cholesterol. And there was no harm. I mean, I'd left a couple of bucks on the counter.
Yeah, you just stuck in.
I left a few dollars on the counter, but I felt that their cholesterol intake was excessive. 877-301-89. By the way, just to step back from this a moment of seriousness, can you imagine a human being doing this, the mother-in-law?
No.
Well, coming to the house, and she knows it's wrong, or she would do it when they're there. She only does it when they're not there. And combining the salsa theoretically.
Well, it's really nasty for the girlfriend because the girlfriend can't take all the salsa.
You're totally
She's
right.
trying to make her life miserable. That's what she's.
Because she can't do anything but mild salsa.
One of the texters says, "Yikes! What else is mother-in-law pawing through while she's in the apartment?"
Well, that was sort of the point I was
That
trying
is
to
a
make
very
before. I
good
shouldn't use the
question.
example
That is a
I
very
used.
good question.
That was
Okay,
a bad idea.
Elizabeth in Gloucester, what do you think?
Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi. I think that the mother and the son are both a-holes because if he can't stick up for her and they're not married, wait till they get married. Oh, my God. And also, they're living under the roof. I think she should run, not walk, because it's going to be a lifetime. And they say you're not marrying the whole family. You are marrying the whole family.
You always find that out too late.
By the way, before you go, Elizabeth,
too
because
late.
your call was so excellent, do you prefer spicy or mild salsa? What's your preference?
Mild.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Mild, and spicy would really wreak havoc.
Well, that's what it
So
did
it's
for the
pretty
girlfriend.
cool.
So run, not walk, is your advice. We appreciate it. Elizabeth, excellent first call. Thank you very much.
Next time the security camera goes off and mother-in-law is going in, rifling through the refrigerator, call the cops, report a burglary. That'll bring it all to an end.
This can't be true.
What?
Did you read JJ from Gloucester? I assume this is a joke.
When we told my mother-in-law we were trying to have a baby, she decided to...
Describe positions we could do to help with conception. That can't be. JJ, can you write back and say if that was intended as a joke or a real kind of thing? 877-301-8970.
It's mother-in-law's fault, a boundaries thing. My mother-in-law cleans my house while she watches the kids 2 days a week, and even that bothers me. This would send me over the edge.
Lisa in Marblehead, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Excellent, thank you.
I am so excited to be talking to you.
Oh, thanks.
I'm a mother-in-law.
Ooh.
I listen to you. I'm a mother-in-law, and I happen to think that the mother is being vicious.
Vicious.
Not only she's being vicious, she's doing
Vicious.
it on purpose because she wants to break the relationship
That's right.
up.
Why didn't we think of that? That is exactly what's going on. She's meddling in the relationship, and her vehicle is the salsa. Lisa, that is brilliant.
Exactly. No, listen, mothers don't want to let go of their sons. I do have a son. I had to let go of him. However, he left me for another woman. I'll leave it at that.
That was a good one, Lisa.
Yeah,
Call us again. Thanks.
It happens.
Don on the road
Yes.
says, salsa today, perhaps whole milk and skim tomorrow. This is the beginning of a total power takeover. That's a good one, Donna. Thank you for the call.
Mary in the car. What do you think, Mary?
Hi, Mary.
That girl's got to, run, because there's no way this kid's going to ever set boundaries with his mother. And the only way if she could ever stay with this guy is if they moved cross country, because he can't set boundaries with his mother. And the mother just does not want them to be together, period.
Well, I'm so embarrassed that what you and the prior caller said, it's obviously what it's all about. It has nothing to do with the salsa. It was to drive a wedge between the two of them. How did I miss that?
Yeah.
Mary, that was great. Thank you
And
very much.
there's a real kind of meanness to it there.
You think so?
Yeah. I mean, she likes mild salsa. She can't deal with the very heavy spices, which a lot of people can't, right?
No.
But the boy, and she works at a restaurant, so she brings the salsa home for both of them.
Spice deal on it.
His spicy salsa and her mild salsa. And then the mother-in-law comes in and mixes them both together. So the poor girl has a bite of the salsa and finds out it's too spicy, and it probably makes her not feel very good.
You probably like mild salsa, is that right?
I like spice, but not too much.
Like medium.
I mean, I don't like things that are full of jalapenos or, jalapeno.
You don't?
No, I don't. No, I don't.
I like spiciness to the point where you weep when you take a bite of something, when tears come to your eyes. That's the appropriate. Do you have vindaloo? You ever eat Indian food? I don't even know.
Yes.
Do you eat Indian food?
Do
you ever have like vindaloo or something, which is really spicy? You ever have that?
I think I have. I think stick to the chicken tikka marsala.
Okay.
All right. And the naan bread.
Tikka.
With garlic. Tikka, whatever it is.
Fine. All right.
Mark from Pawtucket. Thank you for
Mark.
calling.
Hi. I'm calling because I'm a small-time landlord. I have two tenants. One happens to be my son.
Oh.
Who are rent payers.
Yeah.
I would never, ever enter their unit.
Exactly.
Unless I had their permission or it was arranged ahead of time. And that's appalling. I mean, if I went into my son's place without his knowledge and he found out, I think he'd move out, which I wouldn't blame him because it's just decent. It's a lack of decency and respect to go into someone's living unit who pays rent to you without their knowledge. That's my bottom line. So
let me tell you, you're my kind of landlord. Now, Mark, let me be clear. If your son said you could come in, would you ever consider combining the salsa while you were in there? No? Okay.
No, Jim, I wouldn't.
Okay, I just want to be clear. Mark, you're a good landlord and a good father. Thank you very much for the call. That's
now,
another
here's
good
someone
point.
on the other side.
What is it?
Who says, did the girlfriend say the size of the refrigerator? There's no room, perhaps. The mother was just trying to tidy things up in the refrigerator.
It's her refrigerator.
I know. And then somebody else wants to know if mother-in-law does other things over there, like take out the trash or, clean up things, useful things, change the beds, change the TP rolls, drop off cookies. She thinks that mild salsa is terrible, so it should be mixed with the spice.
Well, that's a topic for another. Mild salsa is almost not salsa. That is true. I understand you don't want extra spicy, but mild is barely there.
You want some kick.
You want some kick, exactly.
You do. Bernadette in Exeter, New Hampshire. What do you think, Bernadette?
Hi, Bernadette. What's up?
Hi, Jim. Hi, Marjorie.
Hey.
Love your show.
Thank you.
So the issue is the couple.
Yeah.
That's really the issue. The problem is the boyfriend. But it makes me wonder what kind of relationship has evolved or not. Because this has been going on for a while. The mother is not the issue. It's the couple. It's the boyfriend who has created this problem. So there's two things. One, do they have a lease? Two, am I correct? They are paying rent.
They are paying rent. It's the mother's vacation house. But they are paying her rent.
But as Mark, the small landlord, just said, you still don't enter if you're the landlord, if it's somebody's renting from you. Respect their thing.
Well, it's also a tenant has legal rights.
Yeah.
Maybe there's not a lease, but that doesn't matter. The fact that money is going to mom makes it a legal binding contract. So they can. Just every part of this is insane. But it goes back to how long has this couple been together? Is there a kind
2
of
years
tendency going on? 2 years is a long time. Why has girlfriend suddenly raising the roof over this? So it makes me wonder the dynamic between the two of them. Because even saying the one person is the problem, like the boyfriend, it's never one person.
That's a beautiful therapeutic analysis of this, which Marjorie and I were missing. Okay. Thank you for adding that. Bernadette, by the way, speaking of legal rights, Jamie writes us a note. Tenants do have legal rights to the salsa.
Exactly.
There's no question.
Not the meatloaf.
It is their salsa.
The salsa.
No, it is their salsa, and they can do with it or not do with it, whatever they choose. You ever think of this, by the way?
What?
Is it possible that the boyfriend wants them combined as a sort of subliminal, passive-aggressive way?
Like a gaslighting kind of thing.
Exactly. You ever think of that?
That's possible, but why wouldn't he just do it himself? Why would he get his mother to come do it for him?
That's a very good point. Well, maybe he doesn't have it in him.
But you know,
he sounds like a little wimp. I mean, no, I'm serious, a little wimp,
but
right?
haven't you seen these movies or read these books where the mother and son have this weird relationship going on, you know, and any girl, a friend that tries to sneak in the middle wouldn't be.
Read this.
Oh, yeah.
This is good. This is worth reading. I know you don't like talking about your affairs there, but explain what the text that just, not text.
Well, we had someone.
We can't say who it is?
I don't think we should say
Why
who
not?
it is. I'm not going to say who it is.
Okay, somebody we all know and you know.
We all know.
Used to live in Marjorie's
used to live on
house.
my third floor.
Okay.
And he used to drink all the booze and eat all the food.
Well, how's that? Other than the fact that person was not your mother-in-law.
Oh, I liked him a lot.
Okay.
You know, he was thirsty. He was hungry. You know, the kids were all excited about this little Dove bars. You know, there were big treats you get. Sort of those little ones. You know,
he'd eat all those.
Oh God, they'd be gone. They'd be gone. Not to mention
how did he handle the
scotch
salsa?
And
What
the
did he do with
bourbon
the
and the
salsa?
vodka. We didn't have any salsa.
Okay.
We had a lot of liquor. Being a good Irish household.
You used to have a lot of liquor.
We used to have a lot of liquor.
877-301-8970. If you just tuned in, here's the deal.
Oh, Jim.
Wait. This girlfriend and boyfriend live together. The boyfriend's mother comes in the house. This is on Reddit. Whenever they're not there, and one of the things she does is she mixes the mild and spicy salsa that the girlfriend bought home for free from the restaurant she did. The girlfriend can only eat mild, so when the combo happens, she can no longer eat it. She's given an ultimatum to her boyfriend, who apparently is siding with his mother.
Right.
And we want to know which side you're
For
on.
the longest time, the girlfriend thought it was her boyfriend messing with me,
that's
as
a
she
good
said,
point.
even though he's absolutely wonderful in other areas.
He is.
And that's the point she makes at the beginning. They've been together for 2 years.
2 years.
She's crazy about him, but then have this weird thing with the
salsa.
mother-in-law and the salsa. And she said after accusing, the girlfriend says after accusing the boyfriend for a long time, they had a huge fight about this. And then she got the security camera and found out it was the mother, which sparked another huge fight. And she said how weird it was for his mother to come into their space and mess with their stuff. And now she's debating if she should move out, because apparently she had her bags packed and was ready to go. But because she likes this guy, she's asking if this should be the deal breaker, as it were.
You know what just occurred to me? You mentioned before there was a father-in-law, and I forgot for a second. Of course I am. You're a mother-in-law.
I am.
Do you cross lines?
I hope not.
You're asked to do a lot of wonderful things.
Well, that's the thing. If
by
you're
your
asked,
daughter.
if you're asked for advice or you're asked for help or something, but I think it's generally you don't want to be one of those should people. You know what I
So
mean?
you're
I
over
don't
there.
Like should people.
You're over there taking care of one of your
I probably
grandkids.
say should here all the time, don't I? Do I say should a lot?
I don't pay attention.
I don't know.
Okay, do you? I
Thank
mean,
you.
To that, no, I mean to that in particular.
Yeah.
Do you ever do things in the house that you think need doing that you're not asked to
Yes.
do? Like neaten up a little.
I might, clear the table. And
What if
wash
they don't
some
want
dishes.
the table cleared?
Well,
Do you ask them
no
before
one
you
has
clear the table?
complained, But I figure where there's
How do you know they're not
baby
talking about
yogurt
it?
all over the table and things thrown around, they might not mind if mother-in-law picks some things up and puts them in the dishwasher. I do that kind of thing.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, but I think generally you want to wait to be asked. You know what the big conflict is?
No, I don't.
I have a good friend of mine. She's a hot ticket.
Who is
She's got
she?
6 children. You don't know her.
6 children?
6 children. She got 6 children. She was a nurse for 30 years at Children's Hospital with in an infant room and the thing. Her daughter, the first baby, comes to the family. And, she said, I've raised 6 kids, nursed for 25 years, but I know nothing about children. Everything I say is wrong. They don't want to hear a word I say about nursing, about breastfeeding, about food, about nothing. They want to hear nothing. And I think that's generally the attitude of young mothers and young newlyweds or whatever they are toward their mothers and fathers. They don't really want to hear your advice unless asked.
What's it got to do with this?
It's overstepping your bounds.
Oh, overstepping your bounds.
Yes. Now, one of the texters points out, Jim,
What is
that
it?
some people have a Q-tip addiction. Maybe the mother-in-law has a saucer addiction.
Yeah, I have a Q-tip.
Oh, and here's another good one. FYI, complaints can be filed. Oh, that's the wrong one.
Consumer protection.
The consumer. This is someone who actually did file a complaint saying they don't want the agency to be shut down. But this is the person that said the mother-in-law is the director of DOGE, not DOGE, not Elon Musk things,
What's
but the
DOGE?
Department of Household Efficiency. But like other efficiency czars, she's secretly trying to sabotage and dismantle, not help.
Beautifully put. Lauren in Boston, you've been patient. You're next on Boston Public Radio. Hi.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
So I'm a little late to the party, but I'm getting the gist of.
Okay.
I
You have questions, we're here for you. Go ahead.
So my hunch is that the mother is clearly the a-hole, the mother-in-law, and I guess it goes. I heard that gal from Marblehead call in and was saying that she lost her son when he was married. But I guess I kind of want to throw in a little note in that.
Please.
I've never been married, but my sister was married, and my amazing parents, didn't think of it as losing a daughter. They thought of it as gaining a son.
Isn't that
they had
nice?
Girls, right? And then added to the mix was this amazing man, Jeffrey, that showed up. And all was good. My parents were the impeccable parents-in-law.
Yeah.
Never overstepped. And it was just happy. It was all good. So people, it's kind of weird. They need to let go of the lost thing and embrace another.
That's right.
Another person to the mix.
I like
Lauren,
that.
you're a very healthy person.
I love that.
Yeah.
Her sister is very healthy. Her parents are very healthy
her parents and her
whoever they
sister and the
were.
wonderful man. Lauren, that was a
thank you.
great
That was
call.
excellent.
Now, here's the other side of the spectrum.
Please.
After our wedding, says a texter, my mother-in-law picked out photos to have enlarged and put up on the wall. She left me, the bride, out of every single one.
That's actually pretty good.
Oh, my God, that's a good one.
877-301-8097. Let's go to Belmont, where Maureen is calling in. Welcome, Maureen.
Hi there.
Hi.
Thank you for taking the call.
Pleasure, thank you.
Please tell this woman run for the hills.
Yes.
Salsa today, something else tomorrow.
That's what
if
most
he's not defending you over salsa now, what's it going to be when
That's
you're
right.
married and have children?
Well, that seems to be the consensus. The run for the hills seems to be the consensus advice from callers. Maureen,
Exactly.
thank you kindly for your call. We appreciate it.
My father-in-law used to just walk into my house, made himself a copy of our key when we went away. I had to throw a fit for him to stop.
You know, can we talk about this just for a second?
Yeah.
First of all, I am of the opinion nobody should ever come in your house. I don't care who they are unless they're invited. Do you agree with that?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Secondly, this is a variation on a theme, which is not directly related to this, but it's related to me and my whatever. How do you feel about people knocking on your door uninvited?
I do not like it one bit.
Oh, you don't either?
No.
Oh,
I don't.
great. I thought you're the kind of person who was like an open arms kind of thing. I mean, if someone wants to come over, forget mixing the salsa. They call you or text you and say, is it okay to come over?
Yeah.
They don't just knock on your door.
Yeah.
So do you pretend you're not there when they're knocking on the door? Because I do.
Well, I'm in the top 4 of a 2-family, so if somebody knocks on the door, I might yell down and ask who it is. I might do that.
What if you don't want them
it's
there?
Probably for my
Yeah, but
downstairs
what happens
neighbors.
when they say, I'm so-and-so, and you don't want so-and-so to come in your house? You're sort of screwed.
Yeah.
It's better to hide out.
It's better to hide out.
Just don't move because the floors are creaky. And I know that's not related to this, but I figured it was worth bringing up. 877-301-8970 is the number there, you know?
877-301. You just gave the number.
I did.
Okay.
Let's go to Kathy in Watertown. Hi, Kathy in Watertown. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
I have a lot of experience with this.
You do?
Really?
Yes, I do.
Why?
The day that my husband and I, the day after we were married, his family started to undermine the marriage.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, they came right out and said to my face that they don't like me and they wish that he had married his previous girlfriend who he had proposed to and who had turned him down. Right.
What'd you say in response, Kathy?
I said, well, is she still available?
That's a pretty good one.
Are you still married, Kathy?
No.
No.
No. They set out to break up the marriage, and they were brilliant at it. And after 7 years, I said that I wanted a divorce. And then he and they fought me for custody.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God.
Right.
Well, Kathy,
And
go ahead.
I learned the most valuable lesson. The role of in-laws is to support the marriage in every way possible.
Very good.
It's your job. It's your job as in-laws to support the marriage.
Beautifully put, Kathy.
That was a great
excellent.
call.
You know what I forgot
Thank
to
you
say?
very much.
I've told you this before,
What?
I think off the air. My father's mother was like I just can't believe I just thought of this, was the underminer of the relationship. When we would go over there, she'd call my father into a side room to have she'd say, I want to discuss some financial things. And she'd call my father in the room.
To criticize your mother?
Well, I don't know what she did, but not only did my father go, well, he did go, instead of saying, no, I'm not going to go without whatever, my wife here. So he was
We're
of
all
the same
very
ilk.
interested in the dynamics of the Browdy family.
No, listen.
How we got to this point.
And don't start. By the way, Marjorie, we've been on the air 25 years. She has said about 2,500 times my father went to jail. He did not go to jail. It is true, and I'm not proud of this. He was disbarred at one point, which is not like going to jail. It's because they probably was not very good with a client.
Oh, okay.
And so, but he did not go to jail. Why do you?
He was on probation.
He was not on probation. Why do you say he went to jail? What is that?
You told me once that he went to jail.
No, I never said he went to jail. No, I did not.
Now you're trying to change the story.
Okay, let's
listen to this one. I married this guy you're talking about. We are still in couples therapy. She advises the girlfriend to run as fast as you can. He will never stand up for you.
Well, that is the takeaway from this conversation, isn't it?
Yeah.
You got to.
Do we have time for one more or no?
No, you got to decide. Sorry, we're out of time. You got to decide who's your first love, kind of thing.
That's right. Or not your first love necessarily, your current love.
I mean,
you probably
I didn't mean
were
your
fond
first.
of your mother as a baby.
I didn't mean your first. I mean your first priority.
First priority.
Kind of
okay, there you
love.
go.
So
right.
there was a moral to
There's
that
a moral
story,
of the
which almost
story.
there
That's
never
right.
is on our
Yeah,
show.
that's right. Support the marriage and shut up. Those would be the two things. And don't touch anything in the apartment unless you're asked to. Okay. Thanks for listening to another. We straightened that out, Jim. I'm glad we did.
I'm not quite sure.
Another edition of Boston Public Radio. You can keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow, we're back at the Boston Public Library. I want to thank our crew: Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, our engineer John LaClaw Parker, our executive producer Jane Bologna. Special thanks to Patrick Lally for running today's YouTube stream. The Culture Show with Jared Bowen is right after us. And as I said, we're going to be back at the library tomorrow with some live music and
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And Dover Rug and Home. Rugs and carpeting for today's lifestyle with in-home rug trial and design consultation. Dover Rug in Natick, Boston, Burlington, and online at doverrug.com. Dover Rug. Rugs and the people who know them.